I'd like to call this meeting of the Coventry Town Council to order at 6:37 PM. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Here.
Councilmember Shockley,
Here.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Here.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Here.
President Lima.
Here. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In the event of an emergency, or if you just can't listen to budget talk anymore, there's exits at the rear, at the right and left, and also behind us as well. We now move on to public comment on docketed items only. Are there any members of the public here for public comment on docketed items? Looking to Zoom, any public comment on docketed items only? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Public comment on docketed items is now closed. Can I have a motion to take the agenda out of order?
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Vice President LeBlanc,
I'll second it.
second from Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes. Can I have a motion to go in executive session, closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46-5A2, reemployment contract for the incoming town manager, Daniel Perillo.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Motion by Vice President Blank, second by Councilmember Pasqua. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes. We will now go into executive session. Can I have a motion to come out of executive session?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Shockley, second by Vice President LeBlanc. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes. Can I have a motion to seal the minutes of executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc,
Second.
second by Councilmember Shockley. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes. Members of the public, the council met in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46-5A2, reemployment contract for the incoming town manager, Daniel Perillo. A discussion was had, no votes were taken. Moving on to item 12A, ratification of town manager's contract. Do I hear a motion to ratify the town manager's contract?
I'll make the motion. Second.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc, second by Councilman Pasqua. Any discussion? I just want to thank Solicitor Angel for putting this together so quickly, spending a lot of time on this and making sure it got to the council. And Mr. Perillo for review well ahead of this meeting so we could get him installed and on the team. Any other discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
Moving on to FY24 budget workshop, municipal. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to Council President Communications first, review of FY24 budget calendar. So just so the council's aware, tomorrow we have our workshop with the school department and also with bond council. On April 25th, we will adopt a provisional budget. On May 16th and May 20th, we'll have our public hearings on the provisionally adopted budget. And then on June 6th, we'll have our vote to formally adopt a budget. So just if everybody can keep an eye on those. For members of the public, the budget calendar is on the town website. You can either go there via departments, finance, and click on the budget tab, or you can go to the information tab and there is a budgets drop down there as well. Moving on to FY24 budget workshop. Members of the council, I wanted to see if there was an appetite. I'll throw out I'll ask for a motion here. Given this is a workshop setting, just wanted to see how it would work to suspend the formal Roberts rules and keep it as more of a conversation with directors. So just wanted to throw it out there and see if I had a motion to suspend the rules for this section.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for a session.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Shockley, second by Vice President Blank. Again, obviously the hope would be we don't talk over each other. Everybody takes their turn, but keeping it more conversational, given this is our first time looking at these. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Ludwig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shockley,
Yes.
Vice President LeBlanc,
Yes.
President Lima.
Yes. Okay, first on the list, we have A1, Human Resources. Ms. Wilcox, if you want to come up. If everyone wants to flip to Human Resources in their binder. All right. Is the mic on?
Now it is.
There we go. I don't know if you just want to give a introduction and set the stage for us before we ask questions.
Basically, my budget is mostly pension and unemployment salaries. I didn't add anything. There is a line for employee investment, which is things like I help pay for, the police has a recognition night, things like that, flowers, birthday cake, things like that. Training. Do you have any questions?
Discussion from members of the council? Councilmember Shockley?
So I just want to have a better understanding. I think in our memo, it may have said that pensions were moving out of your budget. So going to the departments where they belong instead of all being in HR. But I see a lot of different pension lines within this budget, within this page of this budget, I should say. So I'm wondering, I see there are some negatives. There are some places where it's remained relatively the same. So maybe Mr. Savetti, if you could just kind of walk me through that part a little bit.
Yes. So what we tried to do this
Is
year.
your mic on?
I believe it is.
Thanks.
Yeah, so what we tried to do is allocate the pensions where the employees are working. So although there's no exact percentage amount for people that are part of the town pension plan, what we did for municipal employees, we use 10% of their salaries, so their pensionable wages. So that 10% of their wages is allocated within each department. So that's where on this sheet here for Department 250, if you look probably halfway down, a little more than half, you have pension municipal DB, which is the defined benefit plan, the proposed budget of 1,177,694. Just beneath that, on the same column, town manager's proposed budget, you see a negative 245. So that negative 245,000 is what we're taking out of that defined benefit contribution because it's now being allocated to each department. Whereas historically, if they were part of the town plan, that whole amount stayed here. So in my opinion, just trying to give you a better or more realistic or more transparent of what each department's budget is. So that's why at the bottom, the very bottom of the page, you'll see in the dollar amount change, it shows that the HR budget's decreasing by 247,155, or approximately a 14% decrease from the prior fiscal year. But then underneath that, we say, if we didn't do this reallocation of the pension, the budget's actually only a decrease of roughly $1,900 or 0.11%. So again, tried to give the comparison of, okay, if we didn't make that one change that we're proposing to do this year, what would the budget really look like? Again, I think it's just more representative that you'll be able to see, realistically what each department's costing you rather than having this total pension obligation under the HR budget. When realistically, if the people are still working, it should be getting allocated to the department where they're providing the services. And then, the other negative number that you see at the bottom, that's been there in the past where, again, for the non-certified personnel that receive the pension obligation, that's always been charged to this budget, but then you show it as a negative and it gets allocated as basically a contribution towards the school, but it's not part of your maintenance of effort calculation. It's just the contribution that you've historically paid to, again, the town pension plan for those non-certified personnel.
Mr. Savetti, could you speak to the unemployment compensation line? It looks like something happened there because there's a 63% decrease when you look at the FY23 budget compared to the FY24. I can see that the estimated FY22 is only like $9 grand. But if you look at 21 and the approved 21, it was 25,000. If you look at the 23 budget book FY21, it was 34,000. So something's going on with that line.
Yeah. So again, the town is based on, as you know, the town pays actual unemployment. So if somebody's laid off, you're not paying a monthly rate. You pay the actual claims when those happen. So obviously that it appears from the last couple of years, there haven't been any layoffs where you're subject to paying that unemployment compensation. So we just looked at, what the budget was last year. Again, it was budgeted 54,000 last two fiscal years. and felt that in the current environment where you're actually having trouble finding employees, the likelihood that we're going to be laying off some employees that would be collecting would be probably minimal.
Got it.
So
Makes sense.
just feeling that, budgeting another 54,000 there was too much. So that's why we reduced it to 20,000.
I like reductions. Thank you.
And if I could just touch base, just as you mentioned it. So the top headings, just make note, the reason you see estimated with the 2022 as well as estimated current year is obviously, we're still trying to reconcile everything. So I didn't want to put actual for 2022 when it's still a moving target. But hopefully that target will be met very soon.
Just shout it out.
We're
Yep.
just talking. I just wanted to ask something similar with temporary help, just for my own understanding. It seems every other year we have the temporary help. Is there a reason for that?
It's always been. It looks like it's always been 10,000, but
Well, it's budgeted for 10,000, but in 21 and so far in 23, you've used very little of it.
sometime, well, at one point they were taking overtime for different people out of it. This year, I think I made a couple payments to a temporary employee in Public Works. Kind of everybody uses it.
Gotcha. I have to keep rolling my head around the fact that there are multiple parts of your budget that don't necessarily have anything to do with HR. They're paying into other departments.
Mr. Savetti, do you have any comments on this budget?
No, again, I think it's, the biggest piece is obviously the pension obligations. I think I indicated in the memo there. We're still waiting the actuarial evaluation. I did propose a slight increase for the pension because we don't know what that actually required contribution is going to be. I'm hoping that we can get that in the near future, but they were waiting for some information from us, which I put them in contact with our investment advisor who's providing that information. So hopefully we can get that pretty soon, but they're still working on the June 30th of 2022 valuation, which realistically should have been done last October or so, but we're
Okay.
playing catch up.
Okay. Last call, council members. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next we'll take Parks and Rec.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. If it's helpful, can I go some line items that I'd like to review with you?
Absolutely.
So if you're looking at our salaries for recreation, I very much appreciate that it's separated out that way from parks and recreation. So I just wanted to point out quickly that the director's salary, myself, and the executive assistant, we actually serve both parks and recreation. So we do run between those two departments, so to say. I also wanted to bring up the program coordinators. So we actually have two. So pre-COVID, we had two. Council was great. They gave us back those two people. So that is the 81,372. So so there wouldn't be a decrease in that necessarily. We did delay hiring someone so we can use those funds for our events. And then the executive assistant, you'll see that we requested a certain amount and we received less. So last year, the 22-23 fiscal year, the council approved a 6% increase for this person, but she only received 3.5. So I wanted to put that money that the council approved last time into this upcoming budget for her. And then I also noticed that the temporary employees, although they're all under recreation, approximately 56,000 is for seasonal park maintenance, custodians, things that directly impact parks. So the rest would be for obviously recreation and those that we don't collect fees for. And as well as the overtime is also parks. We don't have any union employees in the recreation side, so all of that is for the park side. As well as the shift differential, again, that's all for union, so if a maintenance person goes to operator's pay, that would come out of that. So again, fully parks. I just wanted to respectfully point out that there is no step ups. I know they were taken away or any kind of merit-based increases for this department. So I just wanted to be mindful of that as well. And then for the maintenance staff, the salaries, I put in for an additional staff person. We've been having a very difficult time acquiring seasonal staff, qualified staff. We try to increase the payment amount, the hourly rate, but unfortunately, we have not had much success because of the seasonal nature of the job. Additionally, due to the size of our population and the size of the amount of properties we maintain, according to certain sites, planning sites, there should be 15 people, maintenance staff. We have 5. So I believe that if we add an additional person, we can do those projects like the fencing, like the greenway maintenance, more fields, do construction on aging properties to help maintain it. And I think in the long run will help us because we can decrease then those seasonal rates, which again was around 55,000. And then
Do you see that, would that person also help with something like some of the historical locations around town that we've talked about in the past, or do you think that would land more in DPW side?
so like historical preservation sites. So what are you talking? I'm sorry, I would need some clarification.
Oh, so you had just said this additional person could help with some of the greenway projects and different projects going around in town. So I was just curious if that also included some of the historical locations around town that we technically have to maintain, like certain cemeteries and things like that.
So we don't maintain that. That is under DPW's like umbrella. But we would need them more to maintain like our community center, which is aging, our pavilions, which have not been able to keep up with the maintenance that's required for it.
Okay.
Outbuildings for the fields and concession stands, things
Okay.
like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see what else. And then if we go under operations, advertising expense. So with that, excuse me. Go to my notes. So with new programs, there's more cost in advertising. Also, our advertising marketing programs have increased too. Those posters you see, our mass communication, those emails, that's all included in that cost. And those are set prices, set fees. So that's why it is set at that 11,100 versus the lower amount. Just unfortunately, costs keep rising and rising.
What are besides the emails, what are all the mediums you're using to advertise?
So we have reminder ads. So we cater to such a broad audience that there's still a lot of people in town who look at the reminder for the summer concert series, for trips to PPAC, for different summer camp. And we do larger advertisements for that. And that has gone up substantially to about $6,800 just for that.
Wow.
Yeah. We also do that yearly, like constant contact email. You get all those emails. Thank you for opening them and looking at them. So that's 2,400 just there. So unfortunately, these costs just keep adding up. I would like to put electric signage like in the front of our building because that little, old fashioned slide the tiles in, it's not really grabbing the attention. If we're putting all this effort into creating events, I want to make sure people know about it. The police have been really amazing about having us use it, but it has to be related to traffic control. It can only be a certain amount of letters and can only be used certain times. So again, if we're putting in all this effort, I want to make sure people are actually coming to our events and our programs. And then printing. So the reason is so much higher. We've been printing in-house, but now we're doing more events, more programs. Our brochure guides are getting bigger. We do a lot of it electronically, but we do tend to find through surveys that when we print it up for the elementary schools, it's nice because parents get to see it, look through it, and they register. The issue is with our printer, it always breaks down. It wasn't equipped to like print, 5,000 10-page booklets. Also, it's a very small office. You've been there. It doesn't get enough ventilation. It's fine in the summer, but in the winter and the fall, it gets quite toxic. And just for the health and just for the speed, because we're so busy, it just helps to bring it out, give a more professional, polished look. Let's see what else. And then I know the training educational services. We did that. So that's all the CPR, AED, other trainings that we give, not only to our staff, but all the part-time seasonal staff as well. I know we asked for 6,300. So that includes, again, training throughout the year and any kind of training for our events, any kind of first aid, because we're increasing our camp, because we're increasing our basketball program, and because we use a lot of volunteers. I also want to start bringing volunteers to get them CPR, AED, first aid certified, because they're dealing with our kids. So I think that's important as well. And then, thank you for your patience. So the next one is wearing apparel.
Before you go
Sorry,
there,
yeah.
can you talk about the 30 and 20,000 on rental bus and instructional services? It's
Oh, sorry.
yep.
So originally that was put into the budget. Like you can see, like the temporaries got lower because the bus is something we charge fee for. So those are fee-based programs. So that goes for all our field trips. So our field trips for like camp or any kind of like vacation camp, they cover the cost of the bus, the cost of the field trip, and then we add an additional fee on top of that to cover all expenses.
So you're making that money back is what you're saying.
We're making that money back. So it's up to the council if they want to put that money in the budget and have us reimburse the operating budget or keep it separate in a different fund. So we expect between field trips and our PPAC shows and sports and all these fun trips to Bruins that it's approximately $30,000. So we based off the number of trips and we added about 10% more for the fees for the bus until we go up to get bids for that.
Okay.
And then the instructional services. That was those are for our rec program instructors. So those are all those fitness instructors, Zumba, all that fun stuff. But again, the fees pay directly for those services. Thank you for bringing that up. Let's see. So next line, wearing apparel. So that I proposed 8,000. So the 5,500, yes, would cover the union wearing apparel, but we also have to worry about lifeguards and summer camp staff and our events staff. So we did add more for that, and we have for more seasonal outfits and stuff because we are now having more winter events and everything else. So that's what those would cover. And then agriculture hort
The
supplies, sorry.
decorations went up
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit. What are the plans for the extra 6,000 or so there?
So the 1,800 will essentially cover the Christmas tree at the community center. So I added, based on the really good feedback from the community for decorations all over the town. So I added additional money for that, and I can go over that in a second. Let me just look at that number.
Does that include the pocket park?
Yep. So that includes
Excellent.
both Christmas trees, the holiday events, like the Halloween event, like we're gonna go all out. It also has to do the wreaths on the bridge that you, I think would look really
Oh,
beautiful.
the trestle bridge. Yep.
Trestle bridge. It also has to do, as you said, the Christmas tree at Focal Point and more decorations. So it's really community-wide decorations that add, I think, a sense of community.
Yeah.
If we add these decorations this year, will we get items that we can utilize year after year?
Yes, yes. And I build on them every year. Let's see what else. And then the next one is agricultural horticultural supplies. So we don't really, our busy time is now. So right now we're buying, loom, seed, infield mix, like fertilizer, different steps. So you don't really see that money being spent until essentially now and later on closer to when the fields open. So in the past, we've spent a higher number. So this 10,000 wouldn't cover everything we need. We do supplement it a little bit by getting those field fees coming in, but they go for fixing like different issues that come up. So like non-routine maintenance. So we do depend on that as well.
So you anticipate hitting the 17K this year in FY23 or getting close?
Getting closer would be helpful because we have like over 10 leagues in the town and they all have many teams under them. We're trying to revamp the field, especially the lacrosse field at Foster. We're trying to do some fields at CCP, so more soccer can go there. And then we're working with the middle school. They'll most likely be using some of our fields too. So we need that additional cost to maintain them because they'll be utilized more and more. And then the rental sanitary facilities. We have it laid, like every location, the amount of months, their routine, what needs to be handicapped, what not, what doesn't need to be handicapped, bathroom. So these are just the cost has gone up. It's just, we go with the state pricing, but that is just a set cost. I also included some rentals for like events, like if you want a fall festival or another 4th of July celebration. It's a minimal amount, but over the years, we usually spend in the 20,000s. Just because our parks don't really have bathrooms. And if the leagues are using them and our cams are now expanding, people use the Greenway. And then we need sanitary facilities in our town,
I'd be
essentially.
curious to know the cost benefit analysis when it comes to because we have the facilities at a lot of these parks, the beach, we have bathrooms, but they're just inoperable or inactive, right?
So the beach, I only included like one for after hours, but the main parks, the main expenses are like the Greenway areas, the fields there.
Well, I just meant like you were talking about the sanitary facilities, like
Yeah.
they have physical buildings that had bathrooms in them or they used to be operational.
Yeah, so we actually only have one at Foster, Central Coventry Park out west, and like obviously the community center. But other than that, we don't actually have facilities especially during the time that those facilities be open. So if someone was by town hall or the annex, it wouldn't be open to them on the weekend because it's closed to
Okay.
staff.
Yeah, that's a good point because while those places have a restroom, they're not actually open.
That's what I mean. I would
Yeah.
love to see a cost benefit analysis that shows how much are we throwing away on porta potties versus having operational restrooms that are there, which provides a better community experience. But I'm just curious.
That's a big complaint that I get.
Yeah.
Especially at places like Foster. Why are the bathrooms not open?
Mhm.
It's a matter of finding staffing and
Yeah.
there's a lot of destruction if they're not monitored. So we usually, and it's usually there's like during a tournament or something else, people come in, we get toilet stuff, doors thrown off the hinges. It's just unless you have someone actually patrolling it, which I did put in the budget this year. So things get destroyed, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do other towns usually do that have?
It gets destroyed, but
They
they
all
actually have park patrol that
Okay.
has to do that. Yeah. Or yeah, most of them have to do it, or they have facilities that like are better monitored. So country's so spread out and there's so many beautiful wooded areas that there's a lot of seclusion to a lot of areas. So it doesn't make for good public eyesight
Okay.
or oversight.
I would say though, just to go to that point, there are certain places that both the school and the town utilize. Foster Field, for instance,
Right.
there's multiple sports that get played there. And possibly, finding a way to make it so that possibly the sport itself would be responsible for the key in certain instances where you open and close it for your game.
That's
then-
what would happen when I was a kid in
Yeah.
West Warwick is a coach or someone from the league, that rec league would have a key to the bathroom.
So we have multiple leagues playing on the fields, the way they're set up. So it's who to give responsibility for. And then also like I have given it to like the middle school to utilize because they're, part of the town. But before, they wouldn't clean up afterwards or like they would blame another team. So it is nice to have someone who actually works for the town, a part-time person. You just know the job will be done and clean and sanitary. So it just helps. And that way you take less responsibility from the person who's just trying to coach the children and be part of the community. Let's see what else. Rental equipment that was sanitary, sorry. So rental equipment, that's fine. So rental equipment.
What's the big jump on that one?
So that is if we want to do a stage sound rental again, another 4th of July event, essentially, that's where the jump comes from. Where we try to get sponsorships, absolutely, but I would like to put it in there just in case fundraising efforts don't work. I would like to put it in there. However, but that's what those are for, any kind of big event we
Mhm.
have. Let's see what else.
With the recreation equipment, Raina, I see you had asked for a lot and you were given a little. Is there a way possibly, like, I don't know if you would want to spend that 15,000 this year, or if we should try to create some sort of account where we're putting a little away every year for better recreation equipment
Well, that
instead of
wasn't-
230 some in one year.
So that, I'll get to that in a second, and I apologize, but I actually, for recreation equipment, I asked for 6,000. So what I'm gonna do is just go over, I think there was a little mix up between our recreation equipment and then our capital outlay. So,
Okay.
So I will go back to that unless you want me to go to it now.
No,
That's
no,
okay.
you do it in the order that you're
Okay.
comfortable with.
And then the testing services, we have that not just includes water, but that includes Department of Health mandated requirements for our wells, for our fire alarms, for everything. So that's a set price and it's all laid out. So we actually need the 11,497 to abide by DEM regulations, state regulations. And then repairs, property maintenance, it was a little higher than last year. So we usually spend between 30 and 40,000 just in preventative maintenance. So the other things are, I wasn't sure whether to put it in capital or if it was going to go into the budget or if it was going to use ARPA funding. So the rest of the above the 30,000 was for community center parking lot, community center roof, basketball court improvements, community center floor. So I didn't know where that should go in the budget, but for property maintenance, I respectfully request $30,000 for that versus 20.
Not 327.
I would love that. But so what I did was I kind of went, and I know that was a big ask. I just didn't know where to put it. But I just wanted to make the council aware of some of the projects that need to be done.
We did already
Yeah.
get the capital request that was approved by the planning
Beautiful.
commission. I think it was 2 weeks ago, Bob.
Okay.
So the council has gotten it already, actually a month early. So we've been digesting that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then supply, cleaning sanitary. We just are using more facilities. We're using the annex gym more. We're cleaning up some of the buildings on the field. So we're just asking for more cleaning supplies for our supplies and cleaning sanitary, $1,000 more.
And you just opened the Oak Haven gym, right?
We're going, I'm meeting with Russ to discuss that as well. So that would perhaps be an additional expense.
Okay.
We just, let's see what else.
What was that? Sorry, I don't understand.
So Oak Haven School, it's been closed, but that's where the facilities team for the school department works out of. I'd gone on a tour there about 1.5 years ago and the gym was like brand new and it just had furniture in it. And I said, wouldn't this be a great resource for Parks and Rec to rent out and get fees back? And Russ and his team cleaned it up and it looks
Yeah.
awesome. They cleaned up the floor tiles outside. The bathrooms are functional, like it's all spruced up. There's parking over there. So they've been having conversations about adding that as a resource for Parks and Rec to use in the town.
Yeah, I will have to say this weekend, every girls team in Coventry won the tournament that they went to in Maine. Every one of them. So when you think about these sorts of facilities that's already there and available, in some cases, do you feel some of this could also get paid for through fees?
Absolutely. So that would be fee-based programs. Absolutely. Yeah. And then I know equipment repair parts was lowered a bit. So that's everything from our tractors, our New Hollands, our mowers, our weed whackers. So that's where that cost is incurred. It's all of our fall, summer, spring cleanup stuff. So that would be good. The truck repair parts, I'm okay with. I understand it's lowered. We actually have 2 leased vehicles now, so that it does help with the cost, just to be fair. And then Councilman Shockley, what you brought up, the recreation equipment. So we asked for. Let's see what it is.
239.5. Oh.
They were. Where are we looking?
Also, was that at negative 4,000 at one point? Because somehow it went from 239.5 to 15,000, but last year it had nothing in it.
So
And
recreation.
somehow the change is 19,000.
So the
Hmm.
recreation equipment that I put in was for skate park repairs, hard surface courts, like the crack fill that needs to be done. And that's usually be around $5,000. That helps with rolled ankles, just improves our program. It helps, like if we need some like nets, and for the pickleball courts, if we need, different things for our hard surface courts, backboards, all that fun stuff. So that will go there. And then the 239,500 was for construction production equipment. So I had in there like infill pro groomer, a flail mower, which is what, if I had to prioritize anything as far as equipment, that would be it for 19,000. So it's fairly close to that 15. And then we have other things like a carport, a mower with deck, and a backhoe, which I'm not concerned about right at this moment.
These have been in capital lists you've submitted to us before, right? Equipment lists.
So
and-
this has
for ARPA
probably
funding?
been for at least 6 or 7, years. So I
What was
just-
the actual ask for recreation equipment?
The recreation equipment was. I think it was 6,000. Right? 6,500. Sorry, I didn't.
So instead of the 15,000 the manager proposed, you're looking for 6,500.
Yeah, and if you wanted to include, and I see what they did, the flail mower in that, that's the one where, so it helps with the brush, like if you're on the fields, like making sure the actual legal field sizes, anything with hills. And we used to have one, I guess, quite a long time ago. And I guess over the years, the department has been requesting it even before my time, and we just never received one. So we would just need, that would be a priority, especially with limited staff. It would just help make everything's much more efficient. Thank you so much for your patience.
Mr. Savetti, any comments on this?
Yeah, so as you see, when you look at the original department budget, which was submitted at 2.3 million, that was almost $1 million more, about $1 million more than what last year's budget was. So as we tried going through each line item, seeing, what's an ultimate wish list versus what's reality.
Yeah.
To put it plain. So we did try to exclude some of the items that we felt were one-time purchases. So as you mentioned, some of that stuff in the recreation equipment, as well as the property maintenance, the 327,000. We thought those are more capital related or items that possibly could be ARPA utilization. And taking that into consideration. And then just to be honest with you, there's trying to understand really the whole recreation department. Since I got here, we've had several discussions, and it looks like there's been some changes how things have been accounted for in the past, where it seems like some of the program fees would be put over into, if I get the fund wrong, but it's a my rec account, if I get the right terminology. So it's accounted for one place, yet we have all the expenses or majority of expenses in the general fund. And then it looks like in fiscal 23, they tried to bring it all into the general fund. And so that's really what we're looking at. If the expenses are going to be here, we got to make sure that when we're budgeting the revenue, we're budgeting all their program revenue. So some of it would be, cost neutral.
Yeah.
You have the revenue to offset, but we need to show the expenses here, get the revenue in there. So I understand why there'd be some increases, but just like a case in point, one of the first line items, temporary employees. You had a budget of 142,000, they requested 406,000.
Right.
I don't see the extra revenue coming in to say we can budget 406,000. It's my understanding that what they projected for revenue in fiscal 23 is 100% of that revenue. So, you know, if we're gonna have the same, approximately the same amount of revenue, how could we justify an additional 300,000 or 250,000 temporary employee expense?
Mhm.
So there was just a lot of going through and try to say, okay, what's a realistic budget? I think, you know, as you know, you don't have the revenue component. I hope to get that completed tomorrow. But it's going to be a matter of sitting with, you know, Raina as well as Denise saying, okay, what's your true revenue? If we're going to have 100% of the expense there, what's the revenue? And then you do still have some funds that are available in that MyRec account because there's been, again, revenue that's accumulated in the past that it's sitting there. So could that be utilized for some of these one-time items? Possibility. Is it there to help expand certain programs, even do minor things like the donations? You know, it's not a huge line in them, but if there's a couple 100,000 that's sitting in that MyRec account, what's it there for?
Mhm.
Because it was built up, and again, just looking at the surface, I haven't been able to dig into every account, but looking at it, it looks like obviously programs are run, fees were generated, but expenses were paid for with the general fund. And so now you have all this extra revenue that's been put into a fund. Let's put that to use. Let's use that to buy some of the equipment they need. And if some of it's truly restricted for programs, then it's restricted for certain programs. But if it was generated from programs that have already been provided, then there is no restriction to that money.
So
We can
there-
get you that, the dollar amount, what's in that account.
So when COVID hit, we decreased our budget. So we were told to use that 153 fund or the MyRec fund. And out of that, we were able to, with permission, purchase parks equipment, programs. We essentially ran out of that. Now, over the years, until our current town finance director, that money, although we put it towards that 153 to pay that, it was not taken from there. So we do have the records of that, but it was not appropriately moved to where it should have been. So, so before COVID hit, we had everything in our budget, and we would reimburse the town from that fund 153. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened since COVID hit, though.
Okay, so you're in agreement with what he's saying?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Can I ask, as we look at this budget, things like impact fees, have we been spending that money? And in which case, and this isn't just for Parks and Rec, I'm talking overall, like there's money that is supposed to, there's things that's supposed to pay for. And some of them are these larger ticket items. So I'm just wondering what's happening there. I know there were a lot of accounts and we're trying to get fewer accounts. But I would really like to find that out because, you know, I'm feeling like in the next couple of weeks, we're going to say that could be paid for with ARPA funds a lot. And there's only so many things that actually can. So what we have for that sort of money, and you look like you have a lot to say about that, but just what we have for impact fee money and how we can find out what's there, what departments it should be going to, and what it should be paying for.
Yeah, we did ask the planning department, you know, when Mr. Wazika was here, we tried communicating with planning to see if they had any type of records of, you know, what's in the impact fees, what's been kept. So they did provide some of that information. I just haven't, you know, been able to dig through it yet and go into details. But, you know, again, that was the account where I said there's probably 325 accounts or so, different bank accounts where they were set up. So I could tell you there's, and again, don't quote me on the amount, but there's in excess of $2 million that's sitting out there and restricted for impact fees or dedicated for impact fees. But I'd have to look at your, you know, your actual ordinance or charter that says how that's allocated, how much is recreation, how much education, what's, you know, public safety. There's different
Yeah.
components.
I'm just bringing it up now.
Oh, I could
and I
definitely
want to
look
see it
at
for every department. Yeah.
I actually don't know if they've been dispersed in a long time. We had had a conversation with the school department on this, and I think the last time they received an impact fee disbursement was 2020, 2021. So.
There's definitely a lot of things that could be spent on. So to get that properly allocated so we can better determine what we need in our capital budget and what we have to budget for annually, that would help all members of the
This actually came up last budget season, and I had talked to Manager Marchand at the time, and he was looking into it. And then I followed up with him again about 8 months later, and he said what President Lima said, that no funds have been distributed since 2020 on the impact fees, and I know the schools have been asking for their impact fees. I know it can go, a piece goes to the police goes to DPW, Park and Recs. I mean, it touches almost all departments. And I would actually appreciate it if if we could know how much is supposed to be allocated, because I feel like it can help with our budget
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Any further discussion on Parks and Rec?
Did you have something else to say? Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to Human Services, Mr. Robillard.
I believe it's a pretty straightforward budget. We try to minimize costs with grant funding for all of our programming so that neither our seniors or taxpayers need to pay for those services. A lot of the work that we're doing is to continue to build the services for human services in the town. We're at pre-COVID levels finally with our seniors, which I'm really happy to say that because it's taken a while to get there. And we have probably about 85 seniors that come to our senior center every day for a variety of programs, and some days up to 150. Depends on what's happening, what events are happening, and what programs are running.
So I'm wondering, you mentioned having grants. Mr. Sveti, are we staying consistent with putting all expenses in the budget? And then if we get reimbursement from a grant, we take it out, or?
What
How-
usually happens with grants, they're specific for when you're doing the application, it is not for like cost for employees. It's more cost for services like programs, health and wellness programs. We get grants on an annual basis from the Office of Healthy Aging, which is all around senior service provision. Some of that goes towards our health services, hiring our yoga instructors, our crafts instructors, all of our instructors, so that they're not coming out of this budget. One of the main focuses is to minimize the cost and maximize the services.
And I agree with you 100%, but I just feel like with Parks and Rec, we're adding everything into the budget and then putting the revenue source on the back end. Should we be doing the same here?
Yeah, again, I think they're two different animals. As Bob just mentioned, with the senior center, these are grants that they're all maintained in separate special revenue funds. And those separate special revenue funds have the costs associated. They're both reflected there. The difference with the Parks and Recreation Department, we had revenue going into one fund and expenses going in the other. So I was just trying to match the two. But there's nothing to stop this council if you want to say that all the programs that the Recreation Department runs, let's account for those in a special revenue fund, separate from the general fund budget. You certainly can do that, have the revenue there, but at the same time, you need to then allocate your expenses. So you can't have your temporary employees as part of the rec department while all the revenue is going elsewhere. So you're just building a big surplus in another fund and taking it here.
To
Is
me,
it
that
sup-
sounds
it's a
easier
dollar for
to,
dollar.
I apologize for interrupting. To me, that sounds easier to reconcile, but I would defer to you because I'm not reconciling it.
Again, it's really up to what the council would rather see. If you feel that those programs are really just part of your general fund operations, you're running a Parks and Rec department, then it really should be just part of the Parks and Rec.
Yeah, because I guess when I look at this, if I wasn't on the council and I was just looking at this budget and I'm just seeing the expense for all of these items without the understanding of a revenue source outside of my tax dollars to pay for them, I might be turned off. But if I knew that there was that added revenue source outside of property taxes, I might have a much different view of it.
And we could certainly look to do that. We could look to add, again, if we put all the expenses in here and you roll in underneath human services, grant money received, you put that as a revenue line. It's again, it's up. It hasn't been done in the past, but it certainly can be. It's really up
And
to,
most departments go for grant funding as much as they can. And I think that's something that is under discussed within our town about all the hard work that happens behind the scenes to run our operations. And I think that there's a lot of great work that's happening around grants that have been attained or that are in process that I think the general public would benefit from seeing all the hard work that happens on a daily basis to make sure that there's funding to run programs and build better services in our town.
Yeah, the actual cost of services, once all those grants are factored in, I think it makes the percentage you're paying seem a little more palatable. And I'm really impressed. I think everyone does do a great job getting grants. You have to kind of be at this level of paying attention to know how much is going on behind the scenes.
Mr. Robillard, I just want to say thank you for stepping up to be the interim town manager. Just want to take a second and say thanks.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I do appreciate your budget. I think this is more of a question for Mr. Savetti and the town manager. For example, in this budget, the director, there's no raise increase. I don't know if we should have a discussion at a future point before this budget is finalized, but I don't know, with inflation going as high as it is, it's actually a pay cut if you're not giving yourself anything. So I think we should look at directors in totality and come up with a raise, a necessary raise. So thanks.
Question on the pension. I know you mentioned you're repointing the pensions towards department. Is that what the 488% increases on this budget? Is just simply
Yes.
repointing it to the correct?
yeah, I think if you look, right, if you look at previous year, and actually even the director's proposed budget, he had just budgeted 10% of the director's salary, not the pension that's allocated to the other employees, long-term employees that are under the town pension plan versus the ICMA or the 457 current plan. So allocating that 10% to each of the employees that are actually getting a pension benefit is what pushes his budget, higher than anticipated. So,
And that was previously in the HR budget, kind of consolidated. And from my conversations with our finance director that, the state standards on looking at kind of transparency across departments and where they're actually funds are allocated to meet those needs for each department. I think it tells a better picture and also is more transparent.
yeah, so that's where, on the last page, on the second page here, when you look, it shows that budget increases, approximately 5.5%. But reality is if we didn't allocate that pension, he's pretty much break even at 0.7%.
Any additional discussion? Mr. Savetti, any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Whedon.
Hello. Hi. Hi. So you'll see it's a pretty straightforward budget. We're asking for a very, very minimal increase. Mostly it's due to the fact that the expected grant and aid that we normally get from the town is going up $27,148. So what I did was I moved some of the salaries that were previously paid for out of the grant and aid account, moved them into the town account because it's better to have salaries come out of the town account. And then we moved some of the expenses that we previously paid for in the town account into the grant and aid account. So you have, I think you do have a copy of what we're budgeting for our grant and aid. So they kind of balance out.
Yeah, so there.
Is
there's
that pulled
three-
out? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So that there's three sheets there where the library budget goes on two sheets, and then the third one is Department 930 GIA, which is the grant and aid. And again, that's 100% reimbursement. As mentioned, there's the grant award for fiscal 2024 is 251,550. And so we're just showing those expenses there. When we look back at, or when I look back at fiscal 2023's grant, I don't see that aid funded as part of the town's budget.
Yeah, they
And I
didn't-
think it really should be.
Yeah, they didn't put that in, but the reason for the increase in grant and aid is, there's two reasons for that is it's based on the number of how much you expend the previous year. And so because we spent all of our budget the previous year, it goes up. And it also in fiscal year 23, the governor fully funded grant and aid for the first time since like 2009 at 25%.
Wait, so, sorry. We spent all our money and we got more.
Yes. Yes, that's how that's how, because we met the maintenance of effort. It's based on the number of how much you expend the year before. So it goes up. The 2 years before, we were appropriate a certain amount, but because of COVID, we didn't spend our whole budget and it actually went down about $30,000. So we're kind of getting back up there. So, which is good.
Thank you.
So where we see on page 2 of your budget, the library supplies, do book materials, data processing services, I take it that's what you move to grant and aid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And this budget also includes opening an additional 3 hours on Thursday nights. Pre-COVID, we were open Thursday nights until 8 o'clock, but we haven't been able to do that in the past couple of years, but I think it's time to fully open.
Mrs. Savetti, I believe you said healthcare costs went up 5.8%. And when I look at this department's budget, looks like healthcare went up 32.25%. Is there any particular reason?
Yeah, it's possible. When you look at various departments, there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason of how healthcare was calculated. Like when you look at the finance department's budget, there was a significant over amount budgeted or excessive amount budgeted. And so we went and actually looked at who was getting healthcare coverage and priced it out based on that. So the number you're
correctly?
seeing for the proposed budget is who's currently covered
Got
under healthcare plus that 5.8% cost.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
So that's why we see it going down in different budgets as well,
That's correct.
because that was throwing me.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have considerable savings in healthcare. It's just, again, I can't speak to how healthcare was budgeted the previous years. It looks like the right dollar amount for the policies were in there, but how they allocated it to different departments. As you could see and as I mentioned, the personnel handout that you have still needs to complete the last few pages. But if you look at each department, you'll see in there where it shows the actual individual who has coverage, if they have the opt-out coverage or opt-out payout versus family coverage, single coverage. So we have it down by each individual.
On the line item, library and children's, I see it's 151% increase. What is that?
So that's
exactly?
because I think that's 3 positions were previously paid out of our grant and aid account. So that's the 3 salaries that were moved back into the town account. We haven't added any new positions or eliminated any new positions. The other thing I want to note that under salaries, Green Library, last year, we had broken it down into what we were paying for green salaries. However, we don't have separate accounts that we pay for out of them. We pay for, they come out of circulation. So they're still in the circulation salaries. So we still do have those, but it's still about
Okay.
the same. We haven't lost those positions.
Are there any changes to your budget that, reductions were made where you don't think they'll work? Or do you think overall the manager's budget is fine?
I think it's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Mrs. Savetti, any additional comments?
I think just as the vice chair mentioned earlier, we do have to look at some of the salary adjustments. I know when we met with, Megan, she had some history, and I think it'd be nice for you to share with the council. You can distribute it at some point, but as far as if you look across the state, what the librarians are paid and some of these assistants and the reference libraries, excuse me, I don't know all the categories, but
Yeah.
Coventry was at the very low end in a lot of these things. So we tried to do, I think, in some cases, a little bit of adjustments, but I think her wish was maybe even higher in some cases. And it's something I think if she could share with the council, just so you could look at as we're going through these workshops and maybe consider. Because my understanding, and I'm new to Coventry, but you have some great personnel that work over at the library from what I'm hearing, and you'd like to retain the people, just like throughout town hall, throughout the town, I should say.
We do. We have a really great staff and they've been with us for a long time, a lot of them. And librarians love data. So all of the data is online that you can see all the salaries across the state. And when I sorted it from like the bigger towns to the smaller towns, we were like down at the bottom. It was kind of eye-opening that, the director in West Greenwich makes what I make, and they have a very small. They have 6,000 residents, and so.
Can you share that with the council?
Sure.
Send it to everyone?
Yeah.
Great. I do know too that in the next fiscal year, this was a big topic at the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns meeting. They are doing an updated salary survey for municipal employees. So we'll make sure library is in there too. I don't think it's always in there, but I'll make sure to bring that up.
Okay, yeah, I'll send it to you.
Great. Thank you. Anything else for Director Whedon? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Engineering, Mr. Levesque. What's the tab number? Someone help me.
So this budget put forth reflects the addition of a added engineering position. With the addition of this position, I could bring the sewer operating duties in-house. With that comes a savings to the town. We're currently expending over $13,000 a month for a consultant to do these duties, which consists of inspection of our pump facilities, pump station facilities, record keeping, light maintenance, flow data collection, et cetera. So with the new position, roughly with benefits, we're roughly at about 107,000. Right now, we're expending. Sure.
I'm sorry, I have no idea where. I have a tab that says engineering, but then I don't have.
Yeah, 810 is what he's talking about. Yep, it's in toward the back,
So what-
before
What
planning.
number is that? Okay, my 810 is on DB, so I think it's just out of order. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Oh, it's okay. So
So,
with the 13,000 a month being expended, we're roughly well over 150,000 annually we're spending on this consultant. If we were to bring it in-house, we could keep our assets closer to the vest. We would have a better heartbeat on what's going on with our facilities. This position would not require 7 hours a day in the sewer department. I could also backfill the engineering department and put this person to work with some things that are being neglected right now in engineering, such as field duties, record keeping, and so forth. So I feel it's a win-win. Plus, there would be some cost savings with this position being
Sounds
brought.
okay.
So you said it's about 108,000 for in-house with all
Yes,
benefits included?
107 benefits.
Okay, so we're saving about $4,000 a month by bringing this
Right,
in-house
and that's just.
and getting more work done.
Right, that's just the sewer related duties. I would have to sit down with Mr. McGee, and I would have to go over, because his department right now is carrying these expenses for this consultant.
I was gonna say, I don't see it here.
Right. There are some hard costs that were expended, because I went back for the prior 12 months. We've expended roughly 188. So there are some hard costs, whether Director McGee carries that or we bring it over into engineering's budget, that could be discussed. So there's still some logistics that need to be worked out to get this, 100%.
Okay.
In some of these places where salaries are reduced, are we reducing a salary for current employee?
No, what we did, again, based on the salary information that you have here, you'll see what their current salary is and what's projected for next year.
Yeah.
Again, where the budget number came from last year, maybe that was, again, we heard earlier that somebody was promised a raise and they never received it.
Gotcha. We budgeted for, but aren't paying.
That's a possibility, correct?
Okay. I
Correct.
don't really enjoy the idea of
Yeah.
reducing a salary for.
Maybe
That-
see
yeah,
that.
that's-
Nobody's salaries. reduced
That's
in
been,
this budget.
that's been showing up in a couple places and it's made me confused.
Yeah, that's been a
Nobody-
question for
So,
me.
so going back to Mr. Robilard's then, the number that was shown that was budgeted for FY23 for his salary, that what isn't being given to him is what you're
He
saying?
was not receiving that to this point, correct?
Oh,
We might need more clarity on that as we're finalizing
yeah.
actual budgets, because Jimmy, I was thinking that when you first said a salary increase, I was thinking it looks like he just got one. Which I hadn't done the math on, but I was thinking I have to do the math on that because that seems pretty.
And I was confused because I thought that some of those department head raises got scrapped last year at the last second. So then I was like, this is against what I was very confused.
Yeah, what I've been told is, again, some of them were scrapped, but they never get changed in the budget. The budget didn't get revised. Some people received their raises where other people didn't. So it was kind of like, let's pick or choose, and
Oh, okay.
who's getting it, who's not getting it was left up to, I guess, one or two different people. But again, even though it's not complete, if you look at your budget, your personnel supplement that I gave you here, you'll have at the top, it shows what the current pay is, and its code is projected fiscal 2023. It shows you their current compensation, if they have the opt-out, as well as all benefits. So that the far right, you can see the total cost of that employee, just looking at pay and related benefits. And then underneath that is where we're projecting fiscal 2024. So you shouldn't see anywhere in there where there's an actual decrease. Then I know through recreation department, actually some of the departments, you'll see there's a step increase. Because if we knew of the step increase, I tried working with folks in payroll, so our payroll clerks, to try to get those step increases to make sure the minimum we factored in the step increase. If through contract negotiations, if there's other raises, we'll have to factor that in. But if we knew of the step increase they're entitled to for fiscal 24, that is reflected here. So yeah, we didn't reduce anybody's salary.
Any additional comments, Mr. Savetti?
No, I think just, as it discussed, I think it's a win situation if we were able to, hire that additional employee or the engineer coordinator. And I think it's a matter of looking at, where that other cost that we're paying, is it in DPW? Is it allocated right in the sewer fund? Because currently, keep in mind, in this budget, we have a $200,000 line item that each year the general fund supplements to the sewer fund or the wastewater fund. Well, if you're going to be some of the work that's being done in that wastewater fund, if it's now going to be covered under this department, maybe we don't need to transfer 200,000. Maybe that's reduced to 100,000, and now you have your savings there. So it could be a direct offset. But again, before I can make that determination, we really have to sit down, as Joe mentioned, and look at where the money's being paid from right now, whose budget it is in. Maybe it's a matter of reducing. If it's in DPW, we're reducing their budget. So it really could be neutral if we're just taking it from an outside consultant to bring it in-house. But, you're all hearing the significant problems you're having with your wastewater program right now, or the enterprise fund. So I think bringing it in-house, as you mentioned, having it closer to the vest is definitely to the benefit of the town.
Can I ask on the engineering services? It seems that you've perhaps felt they could be reduced, but then they were re-increased.
So I was I wasn't using, but the previous budget reflected some cost for the engineering consultant that we had that was acting as the town engineer. Since that position was no longer required, I took some money out of there. But after speaking to the director, McGee, we do have a need for engineering services for certain types of professional services, permitting, et cetera, for that line item. So I discussed that with Bob and Mr. Ruvelon as far as my needs, and they determined that it was needed to bring it back up. So after I explained it to them, they brought it back up.
I had one other thing I just wanted to mention on back to the engineering coordinator. So we have traditionally outsourced to Weston and Sampson all of the activities in the past. I think we saw really great success when we picked the new contractor over the last year. Getting in-house expertise on a sewer program that has continued growing, I think is important for the town of Coventry. And having people here in-house know how this thing works and whether upcoming infrastructure upgrades are appropriate, just having that knowledge in-house, I think would be very helpful for us in the long term.
Right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, if everyone wants to flip to police. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
So this budget's for the police department. It's the public safety encompasses EMA, dispatchers, civilian for the police department, and animal control also. So in the police salary section under the 710, our budget when we presented it, proposed it, I should say, included staffing for 57 people, whereas in the town manager's section, it was for 54. So we were looking to have that increase back up to the 57 staffing. We have some numbers in here that we could explain for that. I don't know if you want to go line by line or how you guys like to do this.
We can go line by line.
Or if you want to talk about at least the big material ones, whether it was decrease or increase, like for example, Officer 3 going up almost 200%. Decreasing Officer 1.
So part of that was when the other town manager was here, we discussed a recruiting tool for new officers. If they were coming over laterally with us, they would come in at a top step based on their number of years that they had been with the other department. So that's part of our numbers encompass that, whereas now it's not including some of that with the changes. So we try to give an exact budget the best we can. We go through half of the year, see where people will be with stepping increases and everything else, and then we adjust them accordingly for the later half of the year. So by reducing this, we won't be able to do that, have the laterals come in at a higher step. So it was just something we're looking at for, like a recruiting tool. So I'm not sure what the council would like to do regarding those amounts.
Can you confirm the number of FTEs you currently have?
So we have 8 vacancies currently.
You have 8 vacancies currently, but how many how many full-time employees do you currently have in the department?
Counting civilians and
Everything.
um,
Sorry, let me clarify. In Department 710, how many employees are you currently carrying?
52 staff.
52. But so in your proposed department budget, you want 57 in total? Is what you're looking
We
for?
want a budget for 57.
Got it. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to
'Cause
clarify.
we're looking to hire more.
Are you factoring in any raises to either your proposed budget or the town manager's proposed budget?
We were not including any raises. Other than, correction on that, the chief and major spot both have a raise built in by the contracts. The other contracts they're in negotiations right now, so there's no amount yet.
I know we don't know what the increase would be, but I was just curious if it was something that you were trying to factor in some way. I know we're not supposed to budget for more than we're planning to spend, but it does seem to be a little detrimental to not budget for something that is likely.
Yeah, I would have gone with the historical increase.
One thing we did do in here was when we were figuring out laterals, so we have 8 vacancies. Of the 8 vacancies we were looking at, we estimated that most of them, probably about a 50% would be maybe hopefully laterals. So we had to have enough money to cover if they did come in a lateral or a top step. That was that portion I was talking about before with if they had years of service and they were transferring over. The other half we did at recruit level and did that amount.
So
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, so knowing this is a contract year, I'd assume, so just to be clear, this doesn't have any base assumption for any contractual raises that might be agreed to.
That's correct.
Okay,
Not in this department,
okay,
maybe some.
sure.
For fiscal year 23, this current budget that we're in, were you budgeting for 57?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any background information as to whether right now this lateral transfer is helping other departments?
Other departments have been gaining quite a few people with laterals. So some of them are even offering incentives to come, like stipends, like East Province officer stipends, like I believe like $7,000 for somebody to go there. The other thing we were trying to do was, it hasn't been discussed with the new town manager yet, but in an effort to try and get more people to come here, they were originally coming in at $850 a week for their pay for the week, which was two town managers ago, maybe actually 3 town managers ago. He kind of viewed them as like interns where they shouldn't get paid to come here and get the full salary. So my thinking was bringing them up to the lowest paid patrolman as a salary while they go through the academy. That was included in this.
Question on the laterals, chief. We have a town pension here. You guys are not in MERS, correct? You guys
We're
are
not in MERS, no.
So if another department's officer comes in, say they, put in 10, 15 years and they only put 5 years in here, how does that affect our pension if they leave here and they're at retirement age and they're out? What's the impact on us having somebody put such a short time in with Coventry and then retiring?
So depending on the time that they've been here, it could be to where they would take the contributions versus get an actual pension. The way the new hirees are, they have to work 25 years of 55, be 55 years old to collect it. So a lot of people will weigh, am I going to be do I want to wait that long to get my money versus now I can invest it, make more money. So that's part of the thing that happens with people coming over here and leaving.
Yeah, I know on some other public safety agencies, specifically ones that use MERS, it's always like a concern that because you could transfer your pension, you know, it's all in one area. So if you put 15 years in one city and you come in and you put 5 remaining years in say Coventry, they can collect a full pension and Coventry's on the hook for it. That's why I just wasn't sure how that would work.
Because we're not in MERS, it doesn't work like that.
So we wouldn't have.
We're not on the hook for the pension they put in with another town that was part of MERS, or even another town that isn't. I think in his recruiting, the way we're currently set up, it might actually be helpful because people can collect a pension from MERS and work for Coventry.
Right.
So Director, or I should say Chief, hi, so it sounds like you have 52 staff or headcount in this area. You have 8 current vacancies and you're requesting 5 in addition to having to fill 8 current roles, right?
So we have 2 in the academy right now. That's counted in the total staffing, but it's not part of the 8 vacancies.
Okay,
So the 8 vacancies would bring us up to 57.
the 8, okay, that brings you up to 57.
We just had another officer leave last week.
So,
12.
so if you don't count the ones that had these 10 vacancies, say something happens.
Correct. They could actually, some could happen and we could lose them.
I mean, that's a big difference. We're not asking for 1 or 2 people here. I mean, that's a substantial difference in what you currently have. That's no, but what he's asking for is substantially different than what exists today. I feel like this needs an additional conversation. I'd really like to dive into this a little more because I think we've shown that public safety is a priority to this council. If you were asking for 1 or 2 and we just couldn't make it work somehow, that's one thing, but there's a substantial ask here. And I am aware, and I think all of us are aware of some of the challenges you've mentioned over the last year in recruiting. So I'll respectfully ask if we could maybe consider this for an upcoming agenda and just dive into some of the background which you may have discussed with previous administration.
Okay. Yeah. We've lost 12 people since 2002. Question 22.
22? Okay.
I will also say I'd like to, during that same conversation, dig a little bit more into the idea of lateral, only because going back to what you were saying, you can leave Coventry, go to another town and buy your time from Coventry into the public pension system. So you're adding
Right.
to your years of service. And people, it might be an incentive for people to go elsewhere and take their Coventry time because they weren't part of that system already. I don't think it's an extra added incentive, but I'm just saying it exists. But if we move people over here later, when they've already gotten some of those benefits from other places and we're the end of their career, I feel that could be a positive. And I would like to discuss that a bit more.
Thank you.
Chief, were you ever at 57? Were you ever near that? Did you have a reduction at some point, or is this additional staff for the first time that's a high number that you've never had?
We've had 57 before. We've had a lot of officers leaving over the last few years. They've gone to other departments, things like that. So, but we have been at 57 staffed.
So, all right, you've had 57 before, and it was just accepted as a reduction down to 54 because of lack of staffing, and it's just been.
No, we've been staffed at 57, but we haven't been able to reach that because of people constantly leaving.
I guess I'd also like to know how reducing your staffing numbers, or I guess I should say, if you were able to get to that 57, how would that decrease your overtime line? Like, would it decrease another line if we could get to our staffing amounts?
So we're going to be
that we-
over on our overtime budget by a considerable amount.
This year you aren't yet, but last year you were.
We will be this year too. But the thing is, right now we have the salaries to offset that, so we won't be over budget. We'll just be over on that line item.
Right. I'm just saying, if you had the staffing that you feel you require, would that line reduce?
Overtime? Not necessarily. It could, we'd have to look at it and analyze it because there's more trainings that are coming up now with having additional officers being replaced. We have more overtime because of trainings and things like that. And if we lose instructors a lot of times that train the whole department, now we have to send them off to a training and then they have to get, it's like a vicious circle.
I also want to call out, and I agree with Member Ludwig that we probably need to have a one or two discussions on this department. Because it's not just we're missing salaries. You're also going to have to add health insurance. You're going to have to add payroll taxes. You're going to have to add 2 to 3% in raises based off of a contract, most likely. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I certainly agree that we need another discussion.
And my concern too is not that it's not needed, but I'd want to know upfront, okay, if we're making this investment as a town, what kind of hefty recruitment effort and is going to take place that to make sure we could actually fill those positions? Because I think that would be, while it helps to fill overtime gaps at the end of the year, that's a huge amount to budget for when we don't have a strategy that could realistically help us fill them.
Just to make sure I'm understanding correctly the argument, even though we don't have these positions filled, we're already budgeting for them. So 57 people were budgeted for in the fiscal year 22 budget. We're not adding 5 people to our budget. We're trying to hit what we've already budgeted for.
They're already included in this budget.
But they were included in the 23 budget.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
they were.
Correct.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
The budget actually goes down a little this year compared to last year. So
Okay, I misunderstood that.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so I think too, I mean, there's a contract negotiation situation going on behind the scenes too. I mean, we
Yeah.
probably need to see the results of that really before we can nail this down, because that may help with the recruitment situation as well.
What's the timeline on that? Do we have a timeline on that?
I haven't had a chance to sit.
Got it.
Dan, you've been here for 10 minutes now. You haven't.
That's 2 hours.
There is progress on the issue, but it's been solo progress that has not involved the town manager. So
That was a
hopefully
fair question.
we'll have something to you in a week.
So maybe we really revisit this after if there's any progress, I think it's a better time to look at that. That may solve some of those issues already, so.
Mr. Perillo, did you have any thoughts on this? I mean,
No, I think the important thing is 57 the right number for Coventry right now? Or does the whole department have to be reimagined based on what's going on in policing?
the state of public safety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is that number still sufficient? If it is, do we have to be purpose people? Is there really the possibility of getting to that number? Every department in the state is having huge issues recruiting.
And I hate to keep bringing back to this meeting, but at the League of Cities and Towns Executive Board meeting, the many municipalities in the room and the executive director kind of gave a slap on the wrist to East Providence about doing that stipend thing. That was extremely frowned upon and was brought up with names without names, but everyone in the room knew East Providence is the one who's poaching people with those big stipends. And they were kindly asked to stop doing that because it's not, we're all trying to work together here. So,
It's not a level playing field
No.
if they're doing that. It puts you at a disadvantage.
so I
for
wouldn't
that.
suggest that be a recruitment tactic here.
I would ask though, if we're bringing in officers at a higher level, does that do anything to impact the number of officers we need? If we have more qualified people coming in? I don't know the answer. I'm just putting out the question.
It would still be the same number of officers.
Talk to me about body cams. I feel like I've talked about that every year since I've been on the council. I didn't notice it specifically in the budget, but what's the future of body cams for you guys?
So we didn't bother putting it in because it was taken out last time and you said we could come back with ARPA funds if we're gonna pursue that. Currently, we didn't have staffing to, or we haven't moved anyone or anything like that to cover that task if we would take it on. So that'll be an additional person that needs to take that function on to even accomplish it.
Is it still the 60,000 and change range, or how much is that increased?
I'm not even sure of the number because we weren't exploring it right now. But we were kind of just on hold trying to fill our gaps with it.
Okay. Can you, I don't think the rest of the council had talked about this. I saw it in an email from you, but can you talk about some of the grants you've submitted? And we did see your capital budget as well, but if you could talk about some of the grants you've submitted so far.
Sure. So we submitted 5 grants recently. 2 of them were 2 admin SUVs for 120,000. 1 K9 vehicle for 80,247. 1 command mobile center with a truck for 123,800. We also submitted a grant for 3 computer servers for the department, and also 60 portable radios that are compatible with the schools, and that was 360,000 that we submitted for.
Okay,
That was under the burn grants.
thank you. Any additional comments, questions for the chief? Mr. Savetti, anything to add?
Couple line items just to bring to your attention. So in the personnel section, you do see where we have a line item for retirement coverage payout. It's expected that there may be some retirements in the next year. So you'll see that line item in some of the budgets, but I think this evening, this is the first one where we actually have that in there, right toward, 3 lines up from the bottom of the proposed manager's budget, at least the personnel section. And then on the second page, where the chief just mentioned, motor vehicles, his initial request was 226,709. The town manager's proposed budget is 146. And what that represents is really 2 of the vehicles, chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 of the regular patrol or command vehicles that, again, I think you should have them in your budget annually. If you're replacing them every couple of years, you keep budgeting them annually rather than saying, okay, we're not going to have it there and then put it there. So the difference is really the K9 vehicle, which we've excluded because that wouldn't be something that's ongoing. You have the purchase, and we would look into that more as a one-time item, again, whether it's part of your capital fund or ARPA funds. I think those are just the couple highlights just to bring to your attention. I think everything else we were pretty much in agreement, but as the chief mentioned, with the personnel lines, when I went through their salaries, and they submitted a very detailed sheet, very colorful, allocating things. I had picked up the 4 vacant positions as well as 4 recruits, which I guess the recruits roll into the vacant officer position 4 or step 4. So he's correct. If we add in the 3 additional positions, factoring about 30 weeks, figuring by the time they would come in. And if you put them at that officer 4 pay rate, you're looking at roughly another, just with salaries, as well as, I guess there's 2 current recruits that are going to be going up to that pay level in July, which weren't accounted for. You're looking just salaries and rough benefits count, probably about another 183,000 added to the current salaries, the way we have it listed here at this time.
Chief, can you talk to me about your legal line item? Where that's going? It's on the second page there in expenditures. 4,500 you asked. It's maybe like midway down above medical and dental services under professional services.
So legal services, that's our transcripts or things like that that we'd have to do for cases. We have to have a transcriptionist go through any cases during our interviews, our video interviews and things like that.
Okay.
It also includes renewals for our notaries. Those are $80 for each person that gets renewed.
Chief, on your repairs and maintenance, if you add up all your different line items, it's 225,000. That's included in the town manager proposed budget. Do you have specific projects related to that 225? So repairs and maintenance vehicles is $60,000. Repairs and maintenance computers is $81,000. So I just didn't know if there was specific projects that 225 is going to cover.
So the vehicles themselves, that's like if you need engine work or something like that. The computers are actually the department's computers. That includes many things.
Okay, I just didn't know.
They're not tied together. The cars are outfitted and everything else in one resolution. We do them totally outfitted.
Got it. Only reason I was asking was if there was like some one-time fees in there that we could potentially take out and use for ARPA. That's why I was asking the question, but it doesn't sound like that way.
Chief, part of the 81,000 that you were budgeting, was that for computer upgrades, I believe? Over there, you had a bunch of old computers that you were looking, because that's, your budget last year was roughly 61,000. We
Mhm.
increased that to 81,778.
Mhm.
I thought there were new computers and stuff in there that possibly could be one time.
So we could go through there and call out some things that could be one time.
Would be helpful.
Definitely.
That works. Thanks.
Can I ask with the motor vehicles, just to be clear, if we went with the 146 this year, would we start putting like 80,000 a year in every year for being able to pay for those when they come up, or would we try to remain more consistent with the 146, do you think?
So with 146, what happens is we put about 45,000 miles on a year for each vehicle. So generally what we do is when they get up to around the 100,000 mark, they get cascaded down to our detail, but we haven't been able to do that recently because we would actually have them. Some other parts of the department need vehicles because most of our admin vehicles between 2011 and 2016 are the years for them. We actually have one that's 2005, and then we have another one that's 2016. But we were just recently, I think we just finally were able to put 2 vehicles into the detail fleet, which actually makes money for the town when they're out on the details. So we had to scrap a bunch of our other ones that wouldn't even pass inspections.
Thanks for the background. But kind of going back to what you said earlier, Mr. Savetti, instead of having a year where we don't have anything in that budget and then having a year where we're looking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, is there a way to make it more consistent
So
as a budget item?
I'm sorry, but so last year they were putting capital, and then this year they're taking it out of capital back into the budget as they've been historically. That's the reason the change.
Again, so
Okay.
I think putting that line on them in there every year, it's giving them the ability. I apologize, I don't know the number of vehicles in their fleet, but I think it would give them the ability to purchase 2 every year, so you're constantly going on a proper cycle, and you'll have newer vehicles, you'll be able to put them into detail vehicles. It's just maintaining your fleet, again, rather than coming in and saying, okay, this year we need to replace 10 vehicles. You're constantly turning over, and you'll see the same, I think, with the IT's budget when we talk about that one next week, where there's a plan in place to try to replace computers every year so that, you know, you're constantly keeping up with it rather than having budgets fluctuate so much.
Anything else for public safety?
He has a lot more budgets, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, for just that one, should I say?
Can't let him off the hook.
No, I'm sorry, I
And I
meant
did drive.
just that one. So we'll move on to non-dispatch is what we have next in our binder.
Okay. So this one,
Pretty much in agreement.
Yeah, I think the biggest change here again is the allocation of the pension.
Mhm.
You see between what the chief had submitted. He had submitted for the pension 401A and town, that line item 7,374. We're recommending 41,332. And again, that's just to properly allocate it. I think somebody mentioned earlier how, I think Mr. Robillard mentioned how the state's looking at their transparency portal, and with school departments, they have a very detailed uniform chart of accounts and line items. Everything has to get broken down by class. All those items in the state a couple of years ago started trying to get that in municipalities so they can look at, Coventry's police department compared to Cranston's, all different police departments, try to compare what the expenses are. So that's been what been pushing the last few years to try to allocate those costs. So again, that's why we're trying to put the pension there. But when you look down the line on, that's the biggest change, an increase of approximately 34,000 from previous year's budget. Overall, without that, you're looking at about a 1.3% increase. Not so much.
Any questions, comments? Moving on to dispatch, we have next. Yeah, pretty much the same. Yep. Any comments, questions?
Some of like where you see the salaries, again, you have the detail salary listing. Some of that is just if they were entitled to step increases or, change in longevity or something. That would be part of what we have there, nothing relative to any contractual negotiations.
Animal control. It's minute, but just the instructional services discrepancy. The department requested almost less than half of what town manager is recommending. I guess that's just based on what was spent so far in FY23.
Yeah, that's what I have. Tried to look the last 3 years, and I know those numbers aren't exact right now, but you see what's been allocated there. I thought we should increase it slightly, although the chief didn't request the additional funding, seeing that we've currently spent year to date through the middle of March, approximately 1,800. I felt we should at least put that towards next year's budget.
And I believe in the capital budget, there's a request for a new ACO vehicle, right?
Yes.
But you applied for a grant for that one, I think. that-
We applied for admin vehicles, which would be more like detectives or
Oh,
things
okay.
like that.
Any discussion? EMA,
I can make one comment. So EMA, we had a discussion earlier this afternoon. If you look at the budget for last fiscal year, the salary was 27,022, and then we had a reduction underneath there, which was grant funded at 12.5. To be perfectly honest with you, when I was putting this together and we met with the chief, he had proposed a 15. I put the 15, not even really paying much attention to the deduction, but I think, in the final budget, I'd like to say we should be increasing that to the 27.5, which accounts for the 12,500 grant reimbursement. And then we would show in the police department revenue, we would show a grant line item for 12,500 for EMA position. And then we would have to do it because that adjustment wasn't done. We do have to slightly increase the payroll taxes. Because again, speaking with the chief and Therese, the payroll taxes are not covered under that grant. So that would be, roughly on that 12,000, roughly another $900 or so that we'd have to increase the payroll taxes. So I can get you those definitive numbers that we'd have to adjust that to gross it up.
comments, questions?
Chief, I noticed in professional services, you had requested 40 grand. The town manager's budget actually put it to 0. What were you looking for there?
So with that, we have to rewrite our hazard mitigation plan. So when we spoke with REMA, they were saying that the costs are coming in between 30 and 40,000 for rewrites on that. So we wanted to make sure we had the money, so we put it there, but we also had applied for grants, so we may get the money for it that way.
And we also in discussion, that was one of those items we looked at one time. So
Okay.
it is just rewriting the plan. So whether they get the grant or not, if they get the grant, great, you don't have to allocate, capital or ARPA funds or other other funding.
It's 90-10. So if we get the grant, we'd only have to pay 4,000 for it. So we won't know that till probably around June.
I figured there was a story. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Love how many things we find out about right about the time we've already had to decide what the budget is.
Anything else? Are crossing guards with you? No? No, right? Yes?
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Yes. So just one other thing, if you could back on the.
Oh,
EMA,
yeah, sure.
The repairs and maintenance for computer equipment.
Yeah.
So with this whole, basically what happens, the fire departments each put in, it was just increased from 2,500 to 5,000. So there's a fund that's set aside and the fire departments put in for it and the town matches that amount. And what that is for is, say there was radio equipment that was, say, damaged in a storm and we have to replace it, rather than have it not be in a budget item, there's this amount of money that they can use to fix it. So what we also have coming up is Reema's looking at building a new communications tower. And we would be able to go onto that, but we're gonna have to pay for our own conversion over to it. And I'm not sure what other equipment might be necessary for it. We're estimating maybe like $80,000 will be needed for that. So what we did was we're not paying a lease on that last tower that we had. So we transferred that money over to this account. That's what we were looking to do, move it over here from the communications in 710. That's the difference of that line item there. So for 15,000, we were trying to move it over. So that's why we asked for the 40, because there's supposed to be another, we were trying to get another roughly 15,000 in there for conversion when it happens.
Okay, so so that one you wouldn't say is one time, that'll be a recurring if we
Well,
make the
no, the
conversion?
conversion will be a one time. We just don't know when it's gonna happen. And because this fund goes year to year, if we put into the budget, when the budget's over, that money goes back to the general fund versus if it's in this fund, we can actually use it for the purpose we're trying to acquire it for.
Did you say there's a place where you minused it out on 710?
So there was other increases in that line item, but that's where it came from. We took it out of there. Because there was contracts and everything else that went up in that offset. We took the total amount out, but the contracts kind of didn't give us a full read on it.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha. So it's showing a negative 7,000?
right, so 7,000 was in contract increases. Or 11% increases in contracts that we had. So it was 7,092 is what we, on paper, that's what it looks like it's getting moved.
I thought we heard about this conversion project last year as well. Didn't we talk about this last year?
So
the potential, at least.
It's been going on for a period of time now. Originally it was going to go on Waterman Hill.
Yeah.
But I believe that it didn't work out with the homeowners, so
Got it.
it's now going to be possibly in Foster. I was here.
Okay. And then you mentioned $80,000 amount. Where did you come up with that amount?
So Liebeset, he's our dispatcher. He also runs all of our communications. He was estimating that. He's really familiar with the radios and intimate with them. He's the one that provided that estimate for me. And he says that's a guess. It's not even anything set in stone yet.
Got it. And then is it definitely going to happen this year? This conversion? This
We're-
requirement?
Right now, they're doing surveys and things like that. So we're not sure the time frame will actually happen.
Got it. Because it's just something that maybe perhaps the contingency fund could pay for if it ever was required. Just a thought, rather than putting it in the budget.
That's where, if I can, I think, the line item they have here, it's really not so much an expenditure right now. There's an additional fund
It's maintained as a special revenue fund or a capital projects fund within a town where, as the chief mentioned, the 5,000 this year, the 5,000 that each of the fire districts are paying, that money's going there. And then they want to take the money to set it aside there so that you're building up reserves in that other fund. So in the event it happens next year, year after, you do have the resources available. So it's really not an expenditure. It's a transfer to set it aside for future purposes.
Understood. Thanks.
Anything else on EMA? Right, crossing guards.
So crossing guards, the increase in that line item is because historically what's been happening is they've been paid by the post. So they get $9 to work a post. We haven't been able to get people to take that position because by the time they drive out there and pay for gas, it's not even worth them driving out there. So what it was they were brought up to what, $15 an hour? It was $15 an hour is what it was changed to work out.
And can you remind me why the school doesn't pay for this?
I'm not sure. They it's always been in my budget when in the police feel, maybe because maintenance of effort, I would guess. I'm not sure. It's always been here, so.
Interesting. Okay. Just thought I'd ask.
And I'm guessing every place we have crossing guards, we're mandated to have crossing guards.
They're the school zones. That's where they are at. So I'm not sure if it's required by law or not.
So what determines which crossing guards go where? Does the school just contact you and say, we think that there should be one here, or?
No, so we have a series of posts that are that the crossing guards would be at. I'm not sure if there's anything.
Just where they have crosswalks.
Okay.
They cross main roads, things like that.
Anything else? I think that's it for you guys, right? I don't think there's anything else.
The
Fire dispatch, is that you too?
that is not us. That's
Not-
actually chief.
That's general government, okay.
I was just gonna mention that though, why you're there, because it's the next page in your
Yep.
packet. If you want to update that number, I received the contract today. I put in an
Okay.
estimate when I provided. But the contract for fiscal 2024 is 437,100. So we do have a current contract that I believe goes at least another 2 years, and I can circulate that contract to the council if you don't have it, but I did get it today from Chief Brown. He had forwarded it over, so.
Do we need to ratify that contract?
No, that's been approved. several
it's already
years
in
ago,
place,
Probably
okay.
a 5 or 7 year.
Oh, okay.
agreement, So
Yep.
I
Thank you.
just didn't have my hands on it when I was putting this together, and I was finally able to get it today. So
Okay,
That's the revised number.
thank you. All right, thank you. All right. Hang on to your hats, it's DPW. Oh, boy.
Got a guarantee no more snow.
You put the mulch out today, I saw it, so that means no more snow.
That means no more snow. We're holding you to it.
Some of us are older, so I get bigger sets of the budget, so we can see. Public work right now currently includes roads and bridges division, snow removal, facilities and maintenance. We have refuse collection. We have refuse disposal, and we also have vehicle maintenance. So we have those divisions that was there. Up until Mr. Marchant was here, we also include the engineering department was in our divisions, and also building official. He changed those, and that's why some of the questions that went to Mr. LeVake is that we worked symbiotically, that a lot of things that didn't happen in his budget, we actually were able to help him doing test holes or whatever. We worked with him. Now he's, unfortunately, we still will help him, but he doesn't have that one-on-one with us. When we go through the budget, I just like to caution that last year fiscal 23, because the approval of the budget was so late and we didn't get revenue coming in until towards the end of the first quarter, many of the department heads were told to freeze your spending until that has started to come in. And then even the second quarter, we were told, hold off on any big expenditures and wait till after the first of the year. So some of the things that you're gonna see, well, how come you didn't spend all this money? It's because we were held back from spending the money because of budget constraints. So just be aware of that if any questions you might have. If you want to start with Division 830, which is roads and bridges, I'll be more than happy to answer some of your questions. And I've got some notes here that hopefully I can anticipate what your request.
Can you confirm how many FTEs you have in your department?
We have 46.
And how many do you have in your the town manager proposed budget?
40, well, FTE is the same.
Same.
We're asking for one part-time receptionist and clerk for the public works to help offset the disruption that the dispatchers and the executive secretary and recycling coordinator are bombarded with, like today. And that would be able to take over for 4 hours a day, and the other 4 hours, Mrs. Wilcox could utilize that person in the town hall or into the human resources department. So there's no backstop right now.
I can't.
Just say, are you talking constituent outreach over there, or what? You get just phone calls from people? Is that what you're referring to give them a break?
Yeah, we've got the phone call. I think we did a study with Mr. Hutton earlier that we were getting, I think, the third highest amount of phone calls within the town. And people coming to the window for all kinds of questions, whether it be yard waste or whether it be buying dump passes. The highest percentage. 1/3 of the town, I'm sorry. So it's just so many, even, when everything's going on with the people at the front office, I'm answering some phone calls at a time because it just goes crazy. And today we had one person out for medical and nothing else could get done because they were answering phones and dealing with people at the window. So for a 4-hour stint, that would help them at least be able to finish a task. And you get many, sometimes you get mistakes only because they've had to leave it, come back to it, and it's like starting all over again. So productivity is reduced.
Mr. Savetti, you were going to say something?
Yeah, again, when you look at the town manager proposed budget versus, a lot of the differences are up on those salary line items. And again, their union folks are in contract negotiations, so they had estimated initially some type of increase there where we didn't include that. We included if we know of a step increase that they were coming entitled to fiscal 24, we factored that in. But that's primarily the difference. There are some
Correct.
line items where I think we did do small increases. Like we're talking with police and all of the departments, he's having trouble obviously getting personnel, and so salaries is a tough thing to look at, but when you're losing them to another community down the street because they're a little high in pay scale.
And that's exactly right. I've lost drivers to other communities because their starting rate is have a 1 or 2 year step. For our current person was able to go there at an entry level and get more money than what we're paying. So I've lost 3 people like that in the last 2 years. Right now, currently, I've got 3 positions, 1 in sanitation, 1 operator, and 1 driver, positions that I haven't been able to fill. We've been operating with providing more services and no increase in manpower and women power from the last 10 years. And I'm sure Mr. Durfee will be able to attest the amount of households and the growth that's going on in this town. We are asking to do more and more, whether it be in sanitation for trash and recycle pickup to providing services like street sweeping, pothole repair, and everything that goes along with that. So we haven't received any increase in the nearly 10 years that I've been here in manpower to personnel to get the job done as we continue to grow. I included a higher amount, you'll see in my proposal for personnel, keeping in mind of what the cost of living is and what the inflation rate of 6%, and trying to be realistic that our pay scales are so out of whack that I can't, a clerk is making almost as much as a truck driver with the responsibility that the driver has is crazy. And it needs some type of equity in that. It's not there now. So hopefully you folks can get that straightened out in the next few months. And I'm willing to answer any of your questions going down by line item if you wish.
We'll stick to just 8 questions on 30 for right now.
I just want to call for the council. The repairs for street and sidewalk is only 130,000, which I think that would cover maybe a quarter of a road. So if we approve this budget, then I think we also need to tie in ARPA funds related to repaving.
I would definitely like it to see us start ramping up to actually, I don't know, I forget if it's in another part of your budget here, but we need to make a significant regular investment in that line. And when I say significant, I'm talking $1 million plus at least.
There was a line item in the prior budget for street repair, actual paving. And we spent over $100,000 to have that pavement management study done. And it recommends 2 years ago that we spend $1.7 million per year. And there's no place, we keep putting it in the capital budget and everybody dismisses the capital budget. I would suggest that you actually bite the bullet for 1 year, put it in the budget so it maintains in the budget. The 130 you're talking about, Mr. LeBlanc, last year I put in for 130. They cut me, somebody cut me $50,000. They said, we'll pick it up with the ARPA funds. The same thing with pavement marketing. They cut that out. We're going to do that with ARPA funds. None of that happened. So we're not doing any pavement markings this year because there's nothing in the budget. And this 130 is for us to do small sections. Say we got an area that's only 100 foot long that's totally destroyed. We can go in there with our pave and do those small sections. We have one line item for asphalt products and one for the actual services. If we're going to do some sidewalks, we can actually go out to bid and do one road if that was the case that we do for that 1 year. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and without the funds, I can do it. Just give me the funds to do it. Back in 2014, 2015, we did a $10.7 million bond for road infrastructure. We got a lot done with that one. And hopefully sometime soon we can get additional funding on a steady basis.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just capital where it stays or if it's baked into your budget. So that way it's, that to me, we have way too many roads. I mean, we're the largest by land mass. We can't afford to just on a whim decide when to fund roads. It has to be a regular investment.
I'm on the board of directors for Rhode Island Public Works Association. And when I tell other directors how much this town spent, had allocated for last year, $80,000 with a laughing stock. I mean, small communities are getting $1-2 million a year to take care of their roads.
Yeah.
I can't pave a road for $80,000. I can't pave a road for 130. You're correct.
Can I ask, the money that now is with engineering, is there any place that would have been deleted from? Where it was a contractor before under DPW, I believe, and now it's an employee under engineering. But is there any place where we'd see
There's no overlap. The money for engineering would take care of the inspections when we were doing a road project. They would do that. It's not in my budget. It would be in the engineering budget for that.
right, but last year, was it in your budget? Okay, I just want to make sure. That was how I thought I understood
It's
it
been out-
when
out.
Mr. Levesque was here earlier.
It's been an 810 for some time, but 810 was in our budget as a division.
Okay.
While we're on the subject of contractors, can you talk about contracted services?
Sure. That's the line item I was talking to you earlier. That's the pavement markings, $60,000.
Oh,
taken out of the
okay.
budget. And she gave me, it was 2,500, I believe it was. It's just a crazy number. But I put it back in for this year so we can continue with the pavement marking program. This year we'll have nothing.
I believe there was a project around Breezy Lake that was needed. maybe some, I believe it was stormwater drains and all that kind of stuff. Is that in this budget or
No, that's
is it,
capital budget.
That's in the
Capital.
it's only in the capital?
If we have a grant for the first phase that we're continuing with, we just got the last easement from one of the homeowners to be able to do the last, one of the phases of that portion. But there's 5 other portions, phases that need to be included. And that's been part of our hazard mitigation grant applications and with our infrastructure bank, lumping them all together to go out the contract and get the ball done. So the water quality is done quicker than what it is now. I have some testing in here to do some phosphorus study on an annual basis, along with the Breezy Lake Association, to see if we're getting an improvement on what we did before. And this is actually helping to remove that from the stream going down there with all the stormwater.
Got it.
I think it's like 800,000 and change, and you spread it out over the next 5 years. I
Correct.
saw in the capital.
Yeah, and that's, I put that in as a request for a couple of years.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Director McGee, what is the pavement marker program?
Pavement marking,
You said
striping.
the 62,500?
Yeah, that's striping the roads, restriping the roads.
Oh, like painting the roads,
Yeah,
the
pavement markings.
lines?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Stop sign, stop
I
bars
wasn't
and
sure what
crosswalks.
marker meant. Okay,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
Any other comments, discussion on 830? Anything else, Mr. McGee?
Just that in discussion with Mr. Robillard and Mr. Savetti about the capital lease. Right now, all of the capital leases that all the departments are lumped into public works. I believe they're going to be trying to be brought out to the actual departments themselves so that those expenses along with their fuel prices stay as they are. But right now, we have it in the budget in case somebody decides not to do that. So we could reduce the capital lease line on our side for whatever goes out to the other departments.
Okay. All right, we have snow removal next in our packet. Oh, sorry.
Does Mr. Savetti need direction in that to actually move those leased vehicles? Is that what you're looking for, Mr. Savetti?
Now, we've had some discussions and I think him and Melissa, right?
Yes.
Providing information, again, it just, the information's there, just that you want to record it. stuff like that.
Got it. I just feel like it-
Reallocate.
Good.
They just provide the information. But that's where I think when you get to one, that you look at oil, gas, and fuel, he had budgeted a high amount, we reduced it. And it was because he was budgeting 100%, and we're saying, no, some of that's gonna get allocated to other departments. So we do have the information, it's a matter of journalizing it, because they pay 100% of the bill, and they do send over the information, but unfortunately, those reports are being sent here, and just thrown in the drawer.
Got it. No, I know. I appreciate trying to make the departments whole, and we're doing it with pension. Why not do it with the leases as well and any other type of expense?
And the one thing I would ask also in discussion with Mrs. Vetti, in 830, is those asphalt lines that we have, like the 130,000, to make that a revolving fund so that we don't use all of that this year. If, say, we only
Yeah.
use 50,000, that other 80,000 would get put into that revolving fund so that maybe we can do a larger road or do. a
Like you
larger
do with the
project.
sand and salt in the
You know,
winter.
like, well, we don't right now. We'd
Oh,
like
we
to do
don't.
that also.
Oh,
We discussed that last
I
year.
thought we
Yeah.
said to do this
We
like
talked
2
about
years
last
ago.
year, but never happened. So
Okay,
So that's, and again, I think that's all smart.
Yeah.
They made, set up these reserve funds, put it over there, just.
no brainer.
Appropriate council action has to take place where we're saying it's for capital. From accounting standards, if you're putting in a special revenue fund, so it's not really capital nature, where I think the 130 could be.
So is that
capital.
an ordinance you need?
Yeah.
Okay,
And I can work, solicit around the wording. That we have, in order to break it out in your financial statements to a separate special revenue fund, we have to identify the revenue stream.
That's right.
You can't just
Okay.
say we're gonna take the unused funds. We have to say, if we have excess collections and interest or penalties, we're gonna take the first 50,000 of that and put it into a separate fund.
okay,
One of the issues you have in your current audit financial statements, 2021, is some of these special revenue funds that have all got rolled into your general fund where they shouldn't be. One being like your land trust fund. Legally, you're required to have that set aside under your town chart. That's rolled into your general fund. So by rolling those into the general fund, you really overstated the surplus, the cumulative surplus that the general fund has. Those should be separated. So if we want to do it, I think we just take the take the right steps to do it properly so that you can have it reported separately in the financial statement. So you want to see how much is in that fund, it's always going to be a separate column. You're not going to have to try to decipher how much is in the general fund for that. So there's a few areas we want.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think the solicitor and will catch up with you on that.
Yeah, we can't
That's
guarantee
important.
we're all gonna have winters like we have this year to have a excess. Our salt barn is full. And I've had many years that we've spent double what we have allocated
Yeah.
because of the type of year we have. So
Okay. 840 snow removal. Any comments here?
yes, there was a mix up between Mr. Savetti and I. Under the equipment snowplow, we had $20,000 allocated last year. And we were asking for $2,350 to purchase an additional steel sleeves, sanders, a snow blower one of them for our buildings is gone, and also to replace one plow. That's why we asked for the additional $3,500 from last year. Somehow it got misstated, and we don't have a capital lease in 840 any longer. That's been paid off. So I'd like to ask that to be back under equipment snowplow, the 23.5 for your consideration.
Can I ask, because we need it now, let's say we get to May and we haven't gotten another snowstorm. Could we spend 23.5 of what we didn't use from the sand budget? Because budgets are relatively fluid in the same year, right?
Could we, if you direct me to, we could do that. However, it's not giving us a true number for what we use on an annual basis for salt. If that is put into, if we use it, if we have any excess now, we have a line item for capital snow assets. And those-
But if we said we overspent that line item, but underspent our salt line item, it's still all the same money.
that's this year though. That's not.
No, I'm just saying if we need the plow now, like
I'm
we
not worried about now.
gonna need the plow next year,
Correct.
then we could buy it now with money that's in this year's budget instead of budgeting it for next year. We won't need the plow next year if we buy it this year with the money we didn't spend on salt. Like I said, wait till May. Let's guarantee that it's not going to snow again. But I'm just saying, we have the money this year. It's a one-time expense. Could we do that
Absolutely.
and actually get the thing as opposed to say we're going to get it next year with?
You tell me to spend the money, I'll get it. You know, so
Mind you, this is just my idea. The rest of the council will have to weigh in. I'm just thinking there's something you want to buy next year that's not in your next budget for next year. It'd be great if we could use money we didn't spend this year to buy it.
my only suggestion would that should be a recurring amount because a lot of our plows are 20 years old, but are the older vehicles. And as they hit something, they get racked. We're not looking for a replacement process without having to buy,
I get you.
4 or 5 of them. So
That does make sense.
So just so I understand, I mean, it sounds like you're saying the same thing. You're saying if we have money, spend it now to get something we need for the future anyways. And you're saying we want the line item. So where's the confusion coming in? Are you not spending all the current funds that you have for the current fiscal year?
Well, we were directed by the prior manager to hold off on any of those capital expenses or in those until after the 1st of January.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just got back 2.5
Yeah.
weeks ago. So I'm in the process of getting all those things done. Some of our items like the brush chipper and some other items that were in last year's budget, we're looking at going out to bid for those.
I think where we ended was sure, buy it this year, but keep the line item in the budget because we need these year after year.
If you decided on just carrying the $20,000 line item for year after year, that's probably prudent. The 3,500 is for some other items that we're trying to purchase. The sleeves, it's a safety issue. Right now, the employees have to climb up on top of the large sanders, hook up chains and move them either on or off the trucks. These sleeves are actually attached and the loader can go up to them and pick it up, put it in there, and we don't have any injuries. And the trust actually gave us a $1,000 grant 2 years ago to start that process. And we've started that process. So this year we bought 3. We need to buy more until we get to the entire fleet of large 6 cubic yard sanders done. So it's not a one-time expense. It will continue for at least 3 years until we get all the Sanders outfitted with those steel sleeves.
So you are spending the money. It's
Oh,
just,
yeah,
it's taken a little while.
Yes. And I
Okay,
like to
thank
spend it.
Mr. McGee, the 323,000 for the town manager proposed budget, approximately how many snowstorms is that included? Is
We
it 5? Is it
we
7?
Budget for 12.
12? Okay,
Yeah, every year we budget for 12. This year we only had, I think, 5 events. That includes ice events also.
okay, thank you.
Anything else? Have building maintenance next.
One comment if I can on the,
Sure.
so on the salaries, you see the line on the cost share with library. So there's two employees that I believe 45% of their salary is allocated to library and 55% is to DPW. So that's what that adjustment is there. And then related to these two employees, we've actually just updated the payroll system. So now it's being done on a weekly basis, where before they were unable to see it. Entries were supposed to be made, they were never made. So we went back retroactive, did a journal entry to get it caught up. And now each week, those salaries allocated within the system. So the proper labor distribution's going along with their fringe benefits, their payroll taxes. It's all properly allocated. So those adjustments are reflected here as well, which is why you'd see in healthcare, again, healthcare, it was budgeted
Yeah.
at 73 last year. We have it at 62. That's taken what we believe to be the proper allocation of the individuals as well as the other folks in this budget that have healthcare coverage.
And just another note, the reason why the library cost share is that the library gets reimbursed that money from the state. That's why they need those funds that are utilized to take care of the maintenance of the library, for the capital fixtures of fixing capital equipment. A heater goes out on that side. That's part of that state 45% goes to the library also.
And part of the, as mentioned, with the grant and aid from the state, if you're reducing your library budget, that grant and aid would be reduced. So you always want to maintain your library's budget.
And that's how it went down, because it was 69,000, I think, that was being paid for by the library. Or 64,000, sorry.
That's what was budgeted, but that wasn't the actual amount.
Oh.
Again, where they came up with that amount.
I think you've said that a few too many times tonight.
I can't speak for the past. We're just trying to get it right going forward as best we can.
On page 2 of this budget, Mr. McGee, if you could just talk about the upcoming plans regarding the budget for the annex, I think you're referring to the teen center, and then the line building and fixed equipment.
Yes, the annex expenses have gone up, and this is just the $15,000 difference to cover those expenses. Those expenses, and I know the school department doesn't want to hear this, but the school administration portion of the annex building, they're there and they're not paying a dime towards expenses. The bus company is there in the back. That was given to them by the school department. They're not paying a dime. We've got Parks and Recreation is using the gym. They're not giving us any revenue for that. The teen center is now been relocated there. We're not getting allocated. The only person who's actually giving us income is the Project Friends from the Human Services. Everything else that are brought into that building to make it work, they're not putting anything into the expenses. So as those expenses keep going up, we're absorbing all those costs. So that's all, and that's documented expenses. So we're just trying to keep ahead. And I don't know how, there's many discussions on how they would do that over the last couple of years, last couple of finance directors, and we're still absorbing the cost. So that's all the annex expenses are. The Oak Haven building, as I heard the last couple of days, now the Parks and Recreation is using the gym. The school department gave that entire building back to the town and walked away from it. We fixed it up, got it operational. They're now using all but 2 classrooms in the corner. We're paying a percentage of those costs. And now Parks and Recreation is using that building, but we're paying a portion, 15% of the cost is for cable maintenance. That should be going to the school department. I know Mr. Savetti is trying to have that discussion, but the school department's been fighting us year after year about giving us a dime for the old Caven school under my annex. So that's where we are with that. The teen center, Parks and Recreation walked away from the building on Washington Street, and now we have to absorb those costs. Last year, we've taken out of different, whether it be annex or whether it be out of the historic buildings. We paid to keep the minimum up, but we have to do everything, whether it be heat, whether it be water, if it's broken windows, we gotta go in there and fix. So until the town decides to maybe sell that after we did have appraisal done on some of those properties, try to market them and get that put back to a capital project. We're trying to trying to itemize this into a line item. Yes, ma'am.
So, and to what you're saying, I definitely think we should have a discussion about what buildings we've done these appraisals on, taking the time. Do we want them to remain buildings that the town maintains? But I guess from my perspective personally, if this came out of your budget and went into Parks and Rec and went into the police and went into different budgets, your budget would just reduce so that theirs would go up. But it wouldn't be like I would increase other line items within DPW. So even though it's an annoyance that you have to take care of all these buildings, it wouldn't change your excess budget.
And I started to drop. I'm not complaining about it. It's part of facilities maintenance, but we just need to be funded for it. That's all. If those expenses go up or somebody walks away from a building, we have to maintain the building. I just need to fund it for it.
Gotcha. You just want to see these line items increase where they need to be increased. I gotcha.
Anything else, Mrs. Savetti, council?
No, I think just as the councilwoman just mentioned, the real key is, in speaking with the director, is looking at the appraisals you received at some of these properties and trying to decide what should you do. Do you take some of these properties that I think you had some appraisals that came in $1.1 million, $1.3 million for some of these properties? Do you receive that revenue and then, do you turn it into a business going there and now you're generating additional revenue?
Well, I
So
think
it's just a matter of evaluating and really looking at what you're,
so.
what you're paying on an annual basis, have a plan in place.
So we've had this conversation and last fall, we all approved going out for RFP for a facilities maintenance plan. But it never went out. So, because in our opinion, we'd like to see the status of our town buildings. We've had multiple conversations about how this space may not be well suited to fit all for town hall. There's been talk about if the library should get this half as it was originally intended when it was built. There was talk of could any town services all move across the street? Could they move to the old police? I mean, I think the council wanted information about a plan for all of these buildings first before we started selling them off, especially ones that are in prime locations in town, like the old police station that's in the, I guess you could call it the populous center of town, has the bike path behind it, is near the kind of the major economic development area. I mean, that's a prime piece of property, but we get one shot at that. Once you get rid of it, it's gone. So I think that's been the conversation we've had as a council is let's take stock and then decide what we want to keep and move services into and invest in and ones we want to get rid of. So we just need to move forward on that facilities plan.
I'll just second everything you just said. While, for example, town hall that we're in right now is in literally the center of Coventry, even though this is literally within my district, people won't call this the center of town. So I'm going to be very vocal about not selling off that old police station building. I'm going to be very honest and very brutal if I have to be. That is a prime location that we have talked about the future of Coventry, whether that's library services, we rebuild that building, et cetera. We need to know what we have with all of our buildings before we just willy-nilly sell things off. Thank you.
Anything else on 850 building maintenance? Next, we have refuse collection. 860. Trash pickup. We never talk about this. Nobody cares about this. I believe Mr. McGee did send the council, well, through Mr. Robillard, and when he was interim director, a memo on the current state of affairs with trash collection. And we did mention we'd like to have a resolution to, and some information to consider with respect to renting trucks to help us get through this period.
There's none available anywhere on the East Coast. That's why.
Oh, you already looked?
I've already looked. Nothing available. So, we've got one more truck up today. One more came out of Mac today, so within the next week or two, we hope to have all 9 of them up. So
Within the next week or two?
not up and running. That means we haven't gone through each one and taken care of all of the items that need to be addressed. But if we have 9 up, then we have that one spare that we can take and rotate that one truck out. But we haven't had the spare. Today we ran 5 trucks. End of the day, we had 6. But again, we'll have one more tomorrow.
What I fear is it feels like we're going to be underwater with this issue because one, given the amount of development, it sounds like there's a serious conversation that needs to happen soon about increasing the number of routes we have in town for trash collection. And because I don't think it's changed in 10 years, how many routes we've had?
4 routes. It runs 5 days a week. So we have 8 trucks out on a good day when the whole truck.
Then there's the fact that we bought all of these trucks all at the same time. So they're all going to start experiencing aging at the same time. And if we get on a schedule of replacing them incrementally, we're still going to have a majority over the next 5 years or say that are going to perpetually have issues. So I don't know. It's overwhelming to think about addressing this holistically.
I would suggest we have a discussion a little later on as well, possibly leasing 3 trucks at a time every other year so that we can replace the 9 trucks that we have now. And then keeping those trucks that we have now, making sure they're fit so that we have backup so we're not going to have any more delays in service.
And how many years left do we have on the bond?
10.
We have 10 years left. And you're
Yeah.
saying that these trucks aren't going to last us, what, another 3 years?
Well, they'll last us, but they'll have continuing repairs. The Mack trucks that we bought have not lived up to the hopes and directions from Mack that they would last for 20 years. They're not making in the condition of what resource recovery's landfill is like. And they're in transition right now. It's tearing the trucks apart. That's why I had one of the proposals brought to the council about using the ARPA fund. I believe it's $77,000 to have the trash trucks come here, use the transfer station, and then just haul the boxes up. So one truck is going up on the hill, and the recycling trucks will still go to the MRF, which is an inside facility. That's a short fix, and it will extend the life of what those our existing trucks are.
Got it.
So.
One of the things a number of the residents in my district have asked about is whether we could possibly look at getting out of the garbage business and doing some type of cost analysis to see, what would it cost to privatize? Because it's not necessarily about any of the people or the routes themselves. It's more about our inability as a town to fund for long-term expenses. With a private company, the theory is that they built that into the price rather than having to vote on the price. It's kind of like, okay, you don't like our price, you can go somewhere else. So I'm not saying that will get fixed tonight or anything, but it is something that has been asked a lot recently.
Mr.
So-
Marchand had asked about that, and we did formally meet with 3 of the carriers, and they all gave us informal prices without going to an official RFP, and they were all more expensive than what the services are that we provide,
I-
not counting capital.
I think that's the point, though. They're more expensive because they're investing in their fleet and we're not. So I think we have to have an honest conversation with ourselves. Is it something we're prepared to do?
Well, and I think too, it's you're saying, sure, it's more money, but I know my trash is gonna get picked up. I know we're not gonna have to budget for the repair piece for those trucks.
And not only will the recycling get picked up, but then you won't have to send the street sweeper because there's glass all over the place.
Those issues
So
are
I know that those are all, this is nothing new. I know that our service is cheaper. I know that we did that in the past. I think that was a year ago, 2 years ago, probably 1 year ago. Yeah. I think the problem though is it's not really about cost. It's about quality at this point. This has nothing to do with staff or our desire. This has to do with our inability as a town to fund capital expense. So maybe that's an item the council can discuss after the budget season, because it's not going to get fixed in, a couple weeks here.
And we suggest if you consider maybe a lease program rather than buying $400,000 for a truck, that you lease it over a period of time and then make a rotation. If you consider it to keep it.
Let me just ask you one question. You don't have to answer tonight. Would you rather focus on the garbage collection at a cheaper rate, and we have to figure out the leasing program and those kind of things, or get out of the business of garbage and start focusing on our roads and other things? Because I think that might be something that we could successfully really launch here if we put our minds to it and use some of those ARPA funds.
Right now, I'm focusing on all the above in all divisions, and we have staff do the job of just getting the equipment to be up to snuff. And right now, I would not buy another Mack truck to do the job. That's it.
I wouldn't either, which is what I'm saying. Personally, I'd be interested in getting out of the garbage business from a town perspective. So
That's your decision to make, not mine. So
I also wonder, while it's a service to pick up yard waste, we pick up an excessive amount of yard waste, and it's really only impacting certain neighborhoods in a positive way. So I feel like if we are going to continue to pick up people's yard waste, they buy the bags from us. Or, I grew up in Ashway and we went to the Westerly dump. And in order to bring your garbage there, you bought specific bags that were allowed to go there. So if people want us to pick up their leaves and provide that service for them, and I'm one of the people that appreciates the service, I think there has to be some sort of way that the people utilizing the service are subsidizing it a bit. And maybe it's, you get to buy up to this many bags. Go black market if you have to and buy them from your neighbors who had some extra. But I do think we have to start thinking of ways to subsidize some of these programs because people enjoy them. They're a convenience, but they're costing us an extreme amount of money.
we have an allocated amount of tonnage per year on our cap. In January, we exceeded that. We have 6 months. Obviously, you're not getting a lot of people. They're already seeing the out-of-waste bags out on the curbside. And we're not going to start collecting until until April 17th. So I can see this year is going to be no different than every year. And it costs about 75 to 85,000 a year that it cost us for yard waste. And that's not counting, even though we're paying zero for the first amount of tonnage on cap, we still have to drive it up to the land. That's another discussion hopefully we can talk about.
And that's the other piece that's never made sense to me is we charge people to take bulk waste to the transfer station, but if you call from home, they'll come pick it up at your house for free. That
I
seems
was just going
backwards
to mention
me.
that it makes no sense. I
Yeah.
think if we have to pay to get rid of bulk, you have to pay us to get it for you or to bring it to us.
I would imagine that taking it to them would, if anything's free, would be that.
Historically, prior to my tenure, we had contractors using the transfer station to dump. And they would do house cleanouts and bring it to the transfer station, and that's all. The reason why several predecessors of mine decided that people want to use the transfer station, they had to buy the pass. We would go curbside, that we knew where the house was and we knew where it was coming from, and that's the reason why. Now, if we're going to change that, even the bulk pickup, that we provide bulk pickup every day, 5 days a week in each route that we do throughout the week. That's something else we would lose that if we were going to go out to a contract. So there are many factors to this decision. So whether it be the $1 billion more, whether it be more contamination at the landfill, because the people that are driving contractor trucks don't care if we're going to get charged for injections at the recycling center. So we actually have a process in place that they look at it, with cameras on the truck, they inspect it, notify them, take them to court if they continue to not follow the regulations. So if that is the decision of the council, I'm sure we can sit down and have that good discussion with the town manager. We can go out to a formal RFP, but that's a decision that's made up for real life, not mine.
So one of the concerns, and I also get the same emails about privatization for trash, and I do think it's all worth a look, right? Why not? We can't hurt to look at it. But one of the concerns that I have is that we very obviously have negative equity in our trash trucks, and we've got 10 to 12 years left on a bond. So if we go out for privatization now, but we also paying for these trucks that we're not going to use,
We would actually require the contractor to take those trucks and use our trucks also, so they'd be responsible for repairs.
Interesting.
So what would they do with the bond?
would they be paying towards the bond too, as well as repairs?
They
Or
have to pay for bond, be part of their contract price. So we're still responsible for the bond.
okay, so you essentially basically just sell your trash business to a company for a contracted price. Gotcha.
I mean, we could always figure out for us what that means. So for example, we can't reduce the overall, percentage or whatever going years back, but we could figure out where do we allocate those funds to next, considering we still have to pay off that part. So I think there are some creative things that we could look at. I feel like we've gone off topic, like pretty hardcore.
Yeah, I want,
So maybe not tonight, but I think it's worth a conversation in the future. It's not going to happen in the next couple weeks. Understood.
If I could, Madam President,
yes.
just wondering, have we done a comparison? Do other communities do their own trash or most of them private? What are our surrounding neighbors
Many
do?
of the other communities actually go out to bid and utilize other, whether it be Mega or whether it be Patriot.
Waste
They utilize
management.
there are some communities that are close by that aren't owned, but very few that have the transfer station that provide services to the town residents.
So it's more of a comprehensive look as to how we can provide all these services within a reasonable amount of money.
I feel like West Warwick almost does half and half.
So
I think West Warwick,
at Mega,
they,
West Warwick's back.
for both trash and recycling.
I think they collect their recycling.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's like a half and half, and I think it's every other week now for recycle, like they changed some things in their local program. So like Jen said, we don't need to go totally off topic.
No,
but
I've
it's
added
a
it to
good
the
com-
list to consider as a wider policy discussion, but I just want to be cognizant, it's 9:30. Mr. Durfee and the planning department have been very patient, so I don't want to rush anybody, but I just want to be cognizant as we move it. Oh. Anything else on refuse collection? Refuse disposal. This was a yowza.
Yeah.
Oing.
This is basically the Rhode Island Resource Recovery. It's dictated that rise in the price that we were paying $53 a ton last year is now going to be $58.50 a ton. We got a $4.50 per ton increase, and that's based upon our 12,315 tons. Simple number. Do that times the 58.50, it's 7.20.
So I just want to point this out for the public. In FY22, we were at 518. It then went up by over 80,000, almost 85,000 for last year. And it's now gone up again by 120,000 thereabout.
Next year, it's $3.
And we have no control over that expense. Where our hands are tied just to when we have to put the trash somewhere.
I'll say what.
And so isn't an increase in weight. It's just the cost to dump.
just because they can't.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's like your electric bill.
Yeah, wonderful.
I believe we referred to this previously as legal extortion because there is nowhere else to dump the garbage.
Not allowed to dump anywhere else.
Yeah.
Could there possibly be a conversation with the League of Cities and
I
Towns
was just
about
thinking
this?
about that.
And as a matter of fact, within the next 30 to 45 days, the new contracts will be coming for the town manager to sign. So every community has to sign it by a certain date. If we don't, then we get charged the commercial rate, which is $150 a ton.
You gotta laugh or you'll cry.
Making me think maybe we could charge a little for that transfer station.
I think this is pretty straightforward. Otherwise, I noticed you're budgeting for the Hometown America, but the town manager zeroes it out.
I hope we do not continue that, so
We don't continue it?
hope we don't. That's the only non-entity of the town that 20 years ago, there was an agreement made between a developer that owned that and the town council.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked
So,
about this issue.
I would hope we stop that. So,
Yes.
I've already got a call
Yeah.
to them about having a discussion, so
Okay. Yep, I remember this conversation.
I'm getting used to it. So, now that the budget's over.
Vehicle maintenance.
This is one of the, I apologize, I'm going to interrupt quickly. I'm looking at the salaries for people who are mechanics. I don't know what a mechanic makes per se, but are our salaries low? They seem, I mean, we have 4 mechanics for
Well-
$250,000.
No, I don't, I was gonna say, we don't have certified mechanics. They're,
So,
We don't pay enough.
you know, I feel like this also has to be a larger conversation. We're not paying people enough to get the quality, and I'm sure they're wonderful mechanics, but to get the possibly knowledge that's necessary to fix some of the types of vehicles that we have.
And that's why I've included, in addition to training line items, that we can get more training for them off-site, not with it to the trust, but going out to places like Liberty, which is our bodies. And they're gonna bring people in here for a cost, but at least they can start the training process.
I was gonna say, incentivizing them to get certified.
And we're going to pay them more if they get certified because
That's what it should be.
I don't want to train them to go elsewhere.
One of the stipulations would be that they would have to commit to a, whatever, the 3, 4, 5-year commitment to the town. If they left before that, they'd have to pay for the training and the schooling.
It's like with it's like with teachers when they get their masters, they usually get like a couple $1,000 pay bump.
I'm not sure we can legally keep them hostage here for 3 years.
Well, I was thinking in their role, I don't know that we'd be able to make them give us that money back. Like, even if we said you have to, they'd be like, no.
It's in their contract. They have to, that now, that if they took advantage of the schooling, that they would have to pay back if they didn't give commitment they would give to the town. If they didn't fulfill that, that expense would be coming back to the town.
Is it not, we have a contract that says that?
Comes by full.
Mm-hmm. Review that. Thanks.
In 8A, other than personnel, we've actually asked for an additional $2,000 for towing line because we've had so many breakdowns for all the trucks. The ones that are in that 15 to 22-year-old range. Tires, the same thing. We've asked for an additional 10,000 in the tire line because we've already over budget. Those conditions on the resource recovery are a main factor of the sanitation trucks. The fuel line, Mr. Samedi and I are gonna do a boxing round with this. I asked for $394,528, which would have been $126,340. Currently, with the numbers that we're carrying, and I have our statement of operations as of today. And we have already, before the 3rd fiscal year has expired, we have spent $354,000 in that line item with the exception, knowing that we have roughly $75,000 to be reallocated to us. But we take those same numbers and go back out to the end of the last quarter with the additional 18,000 that would be reallocated plus what we're actually spending, we would be at about 386,000 roughly. And that's, so I bumped it a little bit to, in case we have another incursion of pricing. We're paying over $5 a gallon for diesel, which is the majority of our vehicles. So we can run short and take it out of someplace else at the end of the season, but other than parking the trucks, we can't. And we had a very small window for snow removal this year. So if we had the storms that we normally have, those trucks would have run longer and we would have had more diesel being consumed.
I feel like fuel is just one of those things, it's just a necessary evil. You gotta pay for it.
Speaking of, how are we paying the extra 90 to 100,000 this year?
We'll pay for our actual budget right now, total town department budget. We're only 1.7% over budget when you put everything together. So whether you have to steal from lines that aren't being utilized, we'll make it work. But same thing if we had a lot of snowstorms. If we're over by 200,000, we'd have to find it someplace else at the end of the fiscal year.
Mr. McGee, knowing the difficulties we've had with the sanitation trucks, it looks like for FY 2022, you had about 178,000 of expenses for repair parts sanitation, but we're only budgeting 130 this year. I just didn't know, since that is one touch point that many residents care about, why we wouldn't, I mean, if we know we're having these troubles, we know we spent 178,000, why we only budgeted 130?
Because we can't anticipate, I'd be happy to take 178,000. However, we don't know those same expenses are going to be forward. I look at what we've been spending over the last 5 years and see what that average is.
But they were newer trucks. These trucks are getting older.
Sorry?
These trucks are getting a lot older. So taking the 5 year, I'm not sure makes
Some of
a
the things that we've actually repaired already may not necessarily continue to be repaired. So I'm trying to be conservative. And if you wish us to go higher, I'll be happy to go higher, but
I'm just saying, I just want to make sure we take care of those trucks. So,
I will not take care of them one way or the other.
got it.
And that includes the same thing for truck repair. We've had a lot of our older fleet have some major issues, that transmission issues and whatnot, that we had to spend more money. Even our equipment, we've spent more money on our equipment this year. I still have my brush tractors just ready to go back out by next week because we had over $10,000 worth of repairs to it.
Any additional comments, questions, vehicle maintenance? Anything else? Heartburn inducing as usual.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
McGee.
Go Detroit.
All right. We've got planning department up next.
Just to mentally prepare myself, planning department's anything in the 900s?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Wouldn't mind starting with 820, that'd be great.
It's the building inspection. section with
Inspections and
minimum housing.
permits.
All set?
Yeah.
First, just thanks for allowing us to, I know it's just part of the normal process, but thanks for allowing us department heads to meet with you. I think it means a lot for all the department heads to have a direct contact with you instead of just it coming from the town manager or something along those lines. Great, appreciate it. Secondly, just want to make sure I introduce Chuck Phelps. If you haven't met him, he's the head of the building inspector's office, and he's here to, when I'm saying something wrong, he'll correct me, because he obviously knows his department really well and runs it very efficiently.
Basically, I don't have a lot of things that I want to go through on this, but I do have a couple points of clarity. I think a number of them you've already gone over or picked up on. As a, for instance, in the personnel line item, you have the clerk, the special clerk, as well as the permit technician. It shows here that it's a decline in salary, and I know we talked about it. Just I'm drawing a little extra attention because that's two of our union positions, and I know that's always something that gets a little bit sensitive from that standpoint. So just like I think you're continuing to do so, something may have happened with previous budgets, and the numbers are accurate, but I just want to make sure that for those two positions that indeed those numbers are accurate coming from the town manager's office. Secondly, I think the word new can come off of permit technician right now. It's just a correction, but that'll minimize maybe some confusion as we move forward in the future. Under the inspectors, we've had a fairly large increase in the amount of electrical inspections, just in general with development that's coming in the door, but also because of solar energy is coming in, and there are regulations related to solar stuff that requires obviously an electrical inspection as well. So this particular budget currently have a part-time electrical inspector. What we'd like to do is double the number of part-time inspectors that we have in order to handle that volume. We've discussed somewhat about having that be a full-time versus two part-time positions. In the grand scheme of things, it's less expensive to do the two part-time positions from that standpoint. So that's what we have proposed in here from that standpoint. I think as a result, if you jump down into the benefits under healthcare, we might be able to lower that, Bob, because I think what we have in here when we were originally talking about, I think you may have doubled up the healthcare on that, thinking that maybe that new position was full-time. But I just want to clarify, that's more of a clarification between you and me, Bob, to make sure of that. But I do think that line item might be able to come down substantially.
Can I just ask, I do understand why it would be less expensive, but do we think we can fill two part-time positions with a qualified electrical inspector?
We currently have one on staff. Chuck knows the industry a little bit more in terms of if we'd be able to find that from that standpoint. I think based on what we have here that we can probably find somebody. I don't, correct me if I'm, yes, please. I was gonna say,
one position, double his hours approximately from what we have now. Couple different reasons.
You got to get on the microphone.
Okay, Mr. Durfee has mentioned to you, we've doubled the revenue and we've doubled about the amount of inspections. So with the solar coming up, and it's not going to go away. It's a timely inspection. And what's going to need to be happening is, my concern is liability. Because when I do an interview with Risk, they ask me how many inspections, how many they're doing a day. When they see the amounts coming up that are going to come up, they're going to say can't be done. So it's a combination, but the revenue's there and it's going to cover the cost of it.
So the fees for the inspections cover this position?
Absolutely. More than.
Can you go into that a little bit more? Sorry. Can you just go into that just a little bit more? So that's why the number is relatively low in essence on the increase itself.
Currently, well, the two inspectors are plumbing and mechanical and the electrical. They're both part-time. Okay. But the part-time on the electrical end it's becoming he can't get it done in the 12 hours, 14 hours. So I'd like to basically double it to about 28. Our revenue for that position through electrical permits and fees, it's already double. So it's more than going to cover the salary, more than.
I think that's where I'm getting.
I think I'm a little thrown. So right now we have two inspectors here.
Yep.
Is that one plumbing, one electrical, and you want another electrical, or at least to make the electrical
No,
full-time?
two, done. Just the electric, the plumbing and mechanical is part-time. He's one person.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's it.
Yep.
The electrical is part-time. He's one person. We still want 2 people total. That's it.
Okay, one of them would become full-time though.
Not full-time. Not with a. not with the
Part-time and a half?
benefits. Approximately, about 28 hours a week.
Yeah, you just can't exceed 30 hours because 30 hours is when the benefits will kick in.
Well understood. We're not going there.
All right, then do you feel better just with the numbers that we have for both healthcare? And no, because they'll both still be under 30 hours.
Correct.
So the healthcare might still go down. Okay. All right. Sorry, it's taking me a little while, but I think I'm getting there.
I still have one question, sorry. Why, this is where I'm getting confused. You're saying that the fee to have the town inspector to come out and perform the service is either comparable or higher than it costs for us to pay this person. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Then why do we
It's not a
have to,
fee. It's the permits, the volume of permits has increased so much,
the volume of
especially with the solar permits. They're not going away. They're just increasing dramatically.
So why wouldn't we include that in a projected revenue for the number of scalable permits? I guess what I'm trying to understand is why do we have to increase the budget to account for these people if the revenue coming in is going to account for that? But why, if we have immediate revenue turnaround on it?
You still want to gross up the activity. You want to pull the total revenue. But he's correct. When we project the revenue, tomorrow, we'll have what he's anticipating.
Nice, Cody. We'll have them anticipate what we project our revenue to be next year. You really don't want to start netting revenue and expenses. You want to see the real cost of doing business and providing services for you as part of your budget. So we want to gross up the expenses, and likewise on the revenue side, we'd increase that. So it could be revenue neutral, or as he's indicating, it's actually going to be more favorable. But you never want to, in my opinion, you never want to net the activity. You want to
I'll
see
just,
the true
okay,
cost.
that's helpful, because I know I'll get a question from people who are not putting up the solar and they say, well, I'm not putting up solar. Why do I have to pay more taxes to pull in another inspector to put up new solar? I don't want solar in my town. So that's helpful.
Well, again, I think once I have the revenue portion of the budget completed into you, we'd be able to look at the departments and do a comparison of, so Department 820, what was their revenue projected at last year? What's it projected at for next fiscal year, and compare to the expenses and still see, okay, from tax dollars, what are we allocating to fund that department? And you'd be able to see, from what I hear, and that number from tax revenue would actually decrease because we're generating more in the solar fees and additional permits.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
And then under the capital lease way at the bottom, as well as the capital outlay project equipment, the capital lease, Bob, I think I just found out last week due to insurance stuff that the vehicles in the building inspector's office are actually part of the purchased ones in the past, so they don't lease. So this lease should shift to the planning side because we have one of the new vehicles on planning. So I think if you take the capital lease out of 820 and put it in 940 planning side, that will even out the cars. But you'll have to add to the planning vehicle, fuel, oil, lube. And then for the capital outlay project equipment, that $5,000 is intended to replace the computers in the building department, the inspector's office. Currently, Cody's office doesn't have the funding in order to add that particular funding to it. So he had indicated if we were going to try to shoot for that this year, and we tried to do it in the last fiscal year as well, but he didn't have funding in his accounts to do that. It was recommended that we put an actual line item in for that. So I know that the town manager has reduced that to zero, but the purpose of the 5,000 was to go through and replace the desktops in that building inspector's office. Any questions on 820? Okay, switching on to 940.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Savetti, maybe when you reduce the health, we can add back the 5,000 there.
Well, that's one of the questions I had. So looking at what I have for healthcare, and correct me, Mr. Director, if I'm wrong, but we have 4 individuals currently in this department. Richard Case, Stefanian, Anthony Natalittle, and Charles Phelps. All 4 of those, based on what I see in our current payroll records, have health insurance, and the
Okay.
cost of that health insurance is 71,078. So I believe the health insurance line's accurate.
Got it. Okay, I was just
Great.
going off.
Based on
Yeah.
what I'm currently seeing, that's
Oh.
the cost. They each have family health care coverage, and the projected cost is 17,769 per plan.
Sounds about right to me.
So one of those situations you were talking about earlier where the healthcare was probably allocated to the wrong department and
Right,
they
and
moved it
it's
to the
my-
right one.
My first budget,
question.
so I a little bit out
Yeah.
of sync with regard to.
Did that, I'm going to be honest with you.
If it, obviously, if it, I appreciate the town manager's input along with the finance director, if that's accurate, because I do want the accurate numbers. I'm, again, a little bit of a disadvantage as the first budget year. And if there have been, I know there's been some struggles with the finances over the last several years. So I will defer to that, obviously, but it did look like there might have been a little bit of a overage initially.
And again, with the 5,000, the rationale, we were looking as a one-time cost and possibly having that through capital or through ARPA funding. So, one of the things when Mr. Wazika was here, we had talked about looking at, having the instruction, okay, sorry to see if there's one-time cost in some of these budgets, and let's pull that out rather than keep it in the operating budget. So when Mr. Robelot and myself, when we went through, that's why we tried to identify some of the items. That's why it's excluded on the 5,000.
So you've said that a couple times tonight. Now, do we have a list of everything that has been pulled out? Have you provided that list to us?
You don't have it. I will put that together and
Oh,
get it to you.
it would be
You
helpful.
don't have, it. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks. It's all right.
So on to 940. All
Yep.
set, okay. Same question I had earlier. There are a couple union employees that show the salary going down. Just want to, again, draw attention to those in the event there needs to be correction. I do think that there is the potential of one retiree this year. That's why you do see a line item that has a retirement payout. I think if the salary is related to that at all, we've got to flip the two, because the one that has the largest decrease is not the one that's retiring. So I think we talked about when we hire the new person, we could do it at a lower step. So I just, again, just to verify, and again, it may be one of these things that's caught up in the budget numbers that were there before, but I just want to re-verify that one, and we can talk about that out of the meeting tonight, just making sure. And then down, and I already mentioned adding in a line item for vehicles, fuel, oil, and lube, and then also a capital vehicle lease to make our budget whole. Under the professional services line item, I had recommended $15,000, which would be a total over the sort of the standard that's been given the last few years, which is 6,500. What I'm trying to do, and the town manager level funded that. What I'm looking to do there is to try to update with the comprehensive plan going to be done this year. Yes, that I want to try to do some of the implementation of that afterward. And I think one of the key documents that needs to be updated is our housing production plan. That's tied directly to the comprehensive plan, to what the state is doing nowadays with low and affordable housing. And I want to make sure that we've got numbers that are going to justify what our proportionate share cost needs to be. It would also put forward our policies and procedures and things that we would need to deal with regard to that. So that plan was last done in 2005. It was a 2004 document updated in 2005. So I do think that document is out of date and requires some update. I would hope that I could try to apply for some grant money somewhere. Obviously, no guarantees in what I'm saying tonight, But that is the hope, that at least we could get some funding in there to be able to initiate that study. If you continue to not have it in there, I'll still try to find a way to at least try to get numbers updated in there based on my experience. And I've done a lot of affordable housing studies in the past. Like, I can try to do that, but my focus after the comprehensive plan is going to be working on a wholesale change to the zoning and the subdivision regs, because those haven't been updated for basically for a long time. As a wholesale look to it. And especially given our comprehensive plan, it's time that we do take a deep dive into those regulations. And that would be it.
Can we also maybe consider ARPA for that? It sounds like if we're only doing it once every 20 to 25 years, almost like a one-time thing as well. So that may be another consideration for later.
And that's fine with me from that standpoint. Given my experience with ARPA funds with the comprehensive plan, I was trying to stay away from that a little bit so that the ARPA funds could be more used toward the infrastructure and related stuff, such as Mr. McGee was just talking about. I mean, he doesn't even have reserve funds for some of his infrastructure that he direly requires. So that's the reason why I put it in as kind of a one-time look in the operational budget.
I think it falls under what we've been calling a one-time item though. So it might make sense to put on the list just for consideration.
Yeah, I think it's worth putting all in the list, and
Yeah.
then we can prioritize from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
That's definitely qualifies. Revolving funds.
Okay, thank you.
I noticed the travel bumped up a bit, in relatively speaking, in both this and the building department. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yeah, a little bit about that is that in coming out of COVID, a number of the meetings that we typically have attended in a pre-COVID are now coming back to being in person. And so sometimes that there are some travel costs that are related, most especially if, say, there's a conference that we go to that's out of state. There are a number of them that the building department might attend, that because of the nature of their licensure and all that they've got to go somewhere, and it may require a flight. But generally with their own, what we try to do is keep it internal to the state, or just in a multi-state area where we can drive to it from that standpoint. But that would be, and there wouldn't be sort of like personal vehicles used or anything. So the travel is really going to be, if there's more of an out-of-state thing, a little bit bigger conference. And the same thing with on the planning side, the 940 budget. The one thing I did neglect to mention is that I am trying to elevate my associate planner into the assistant planner particular position. And again, really that's focused on keeping him in that particular position. He's invaluable to that position with regard to the efforts that he does. And a piece of what I'm trying to do with that is not only to get him into that particular level, but to have some of the trainings that a typical planner might get that I've had in some of my career. I think it's invaluable for him as we grow him into that particular position.
I'm happy to see I would say the pay equity adjustment for the associate planner position. I think that's long overdue. So
Yeah, that he's an amazing individual. Thank you. Other questions on that? There are some committees that I deal with. So they're relatively easy to get through, but the first one would be 941, the Planning Commission. Essentially, this covers the stipend that each of the planning commissioners receives. The basic increase there is that we went from 7 members to the full 9-member board in the last year. So that's a little bit of a bump that you have there. We do have some help with regard to getting the minutes done in that group. And we also have professionally, when the Planning Commission deals in its quasi judicial fashion of doing development reviews, when we have public hearings, we have a stenographer. So there's a little bit of a cost with regard to that. We do pass that, we pay that cost, and then we pass that cost on to the applicant. So that is reimbursed later on. And then we do have some level of expenses that might be a little bit of advertising or something if they do that. But generally that's that budget. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Any questions with planning commission? Moving on to 942 zoning board, a lot of the same answer. There's a stipend there and some money for the secretary that does minutes. And then they have some level of advertising and professional secretarial services. Again, slightly different term, but again, it's the root of it is really the stenographer that comes in for their public hearings. And I think, Mr. Solicitor, just your more directly, or your assistant solicitor is more directly involved with the zoning board in terms of decisions. So I think the cost of the decisions that they help us with come through your budget, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Okay, just making sure that that's understood. Any questions on zoning? 943 Conservation Commission, very basic, just some level of, it's more of a place marker of in case they need some professional services. 944 Land Trust. This basically is what was proposed by the Land Trust and is pretty much a level fund budget. The only difference between what I had proposed or what the Land Trust had proposed that I passed through, the town manager reduced, was the professional services. They typically, when they do when there's an appraisal done on a property of interest, the appraisal is paid for from those professional services. So their written request to me saw that they might be doing 2 or 3 appraisals for the coming fiscal year. I usually don't tinker with those committees that I deal with because I ask them what they want for their budget. So I kind of pass that through. So I basically just defend them in saying that if they're looking at some parcels or they have some that are of particular interest, the appraisal is a key component of whether the town is going to pick up that parcel or not.
Can I ask why you chose to re-up the non-book materials? When it was reduced from 2,300 to 1,000, you brought it back up to 2,300. No, I know.
Yeah, no, she was asking me. I'd have to go look, see if I have a note there. Off the top of my head, I really.
Only because it sounds like the professional service has been increased because of a knowledge that that money is going to be utilized to pay for appraisals. So if there's no need for these non-book materials, possibly we could move at least that amount up into that line and then decide whether or not we want to bring the full amount.
On the appraisals, I would ask for some guidance from the town solicitor, but the thought on the appraisals was if it's relative to the land trust, why can't we use some of the money that's in your land trust fund?
Oh,
There's revenue that's generated each year.
I have
In the
nothing
land
against
trust
that
fund,
idea.
we have in excess of, again, don't quote me, I believe there's in excess of $1 million set aside in the land trust fund. And if we're gonna have a appraisal done on a piece of property that we're looking to put into the land trust, why not utilize those funds rather than your operating budget? That was the rationale there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Mr. Durfee raised an important point here that I'd like to go back to, which is the housing production plan. When the comprehensive plan is done, given the current environment, pun intended, in the state with respect to low to moderate income housing and affordable housing, it is absolutely vital that we get that housing production plan finished as soon as possible. Because without getting into the strategy of the whole thing, when you have developers who intend to construct and apply for the ability to build low to moderate income and affordable housing in our town, it takes away a legal tool that the planning department has at its disposal in scrutinizing these proposals, because there is a heightened degree of scrutiny given to the town's position if we fail to A, have an updated comprehensive plan, and if B, closely behind that, a housing production plan is out of date. A different burden of proof is imposed upon us in judicial review. So I would really implore this council to provide whatever money needs to be provided to get that plan done tooth sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Anything else on the land trust? Historic district?
The Historic District, this again is the budget put forward by the Historic District Commission, and it's basically the same that the town manager has offered up. I just draw attention to the $5,800 under professional services. Within the last year, the Historic Commission did file paperwork. We are a certified local government under the state now, which affords us the opportunity to apply for CLG funding, which is basically historic preservation related funding. They have made an application on time, and this would be this is the 50% portion of the grant should they be given
The
the grant.
resolution. we already approved
Correct.
earlier.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, yep. So that's it for that particular budget, unless you have questions on. Great. I'm all done. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you for the grand finale. At this time, well, just a reminder, so on March 28th, we'll finish the budget discussion. The rest is primarily all in that general government category. So in the beginning of your binder, there's categories that will be discussed on the 28th. Moving on to public comment for undocketed items. Anyone in council chambers have a public comment on undocketed items? Anyone on Zoom? We have one hand up. State your name and address for the record.
Hello, good evening. Nick Longo, 5 Autumn Ridge Road, Coventry. I had a number of things I was going to bring up, but I think because of interest of time, it's getting late. I wanted to just provide you with an observation, and that is that in previous budget discussions in council chamber, I had seen a lot of mystery and intrigue, unanswered questions and tension between elected officials and administrative staff. And it's really a welcome sight, complete turnaround that now tonight's work was a true budget workshop, honest and open and productive discussion. So speaking for the residents, I'm really very happy to see all of the parties working together for a good, solid budget. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Longo. Any others on Zoom or here in council chambers? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Public comment is now closed. I'll now seek a motion to adjourn at 10:12 p.m.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Vice President LeBlanc. Second by Councilman Pasqua. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. I'll see you tomorrow night at 6:30.